Yeah. Watch now. I'm looking for the rules. Now. All right. Shaner, Karen, Allison, Martinez, Scan, and so video. Martin, Shino, Brian, Gary. All five. Okay. Let them in. Mitch, do you want to move around with that? Oh, I guess they can't see. Yeah, we're all on Zoom. Yeah. Can we remove the town? Yeah. Screen. Oh, yeah. I think there's a way to not show those. One side. This is a view. I'm waiting. Hide self view. Awesome. Are you ready? Yeah. All right.
All right, well, I'm going to, Okay, well.
All right, so I keep myself muted that they can hear me. All right, Sam, how can we do this? Well, they can hear you, they gave you the thumbs up. Okay, well, I'm gonna open this work session. All right. Welcome, everyone from Matrix Group to our session. I am Mayor Mary Backern. And I'm going to let everyone else introduce themselves, going around the group. We're going to start with Paige.
I'm Paige Smith, a trustee.
David Pearson, a trustee. John Valentine, trustee.
I'm Leslie Kuzma, the interim town administrator.
And we're all looking at the wall, which is why we're not looking at it.
We're looking for inspiration.
Yes. No rules, it's very funny.
We can't hear you if you're talking.
Haven't talked yet, but we're ready to go. You guys are all present and ready?
Yes, we are.
All right. That sounds good. I was just checking to make sure that we had a team member here before we start. So, well, good morning, everyone. On behalf of our team, we really appreciate the time of the selection committee through this process and the opportunity to further highlight the design group and our approach to this project for the town of Peonia. To start things off this morning, I'd like to get the introductions of our team rolling and introduce them and their respective roles and responsibilities. So I'm Gregory Shaner. I'm the project director. I'm the vice president of Matrix Design Group. I'm also the director of civil engineering for the community design and infrastructure of Colorado. In addition to my role in charge, I'll be maintaining the authenticity of the team commitment to the town and also ensuring the successful delivery of the action plan according to the scope of services and to the satisfaction of the town. My experience, nearly 30 years in engineering, land code analysis, and land planning. The project's really exciting to me because I spent nearly half my career in Western Colorado, working in communities from Aspen to Glenwood to Wrightville, up through Meeker and Craig, the Eagle Vale Valley, and everywhere in between. Zachary?
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Zachary Payne, also a vice president with Matrix Design Group. I'm our co-director of our government consulting services team, and we will be the primary center of excellence that is executing this project, certainly with reach back and support from the rest of the team. My background, I'm a civil engineer like Greg, registered in Colorado. I currently reside in San Antonio, Texas. We opened an office out here about a year ago, and I lead all of our efforts in terms of dealing with or working directly with housing communities. Specific experience that I bring to this particular project is I spent about 15 years in the Air Force, and at each Air Force installation, we had our own housing community that we were responsible for operating, maintaining, doing all the maintenance and repair, and dealing with the homeowners and availability of housing. And so a little bit different, but also when you look at the size, a lot of those installations are very comparable to Paonia in terms of the housing requirements. Chris?
Thanks, Zach. Good morning. My name's Chris Martin, Associate Vice President with Matrix, Director of GIS. So I lead up a very talented team of GIS analysts, and will serve as the GIS data analyst task lead. Been with Matrix for 20 years, Colorado, born and bred, on the Front Range here in Denver. Those little fun acronym letters after my name indicate I'm a GIS professional. So I've been at this a long time and have a great experience with community planning in general, but also quite a number of affordable housing projects. So happy to join you today. Christian?
Thanks, Chris. My name is Christian Karen. I will be serving as the project manager for this project, as well as the demographic, marketing, and housing analysis task lead. Just a bit about my background. I completed a PhD in political science at UNC Chapel Hill, where I specialized in state and local governments, public policy, as well as statistical methods and data science. During my time there, I published 4 articles in peer-reviewed academic journals. I also was a guest contributor to the Washington Post. Since joining Matrix, I've served as technical lead on multiple housing studies across the US for communities of varying size, so big and small. Some of that previous research has been in Tempe and Scottsdale, Arizona, as well as the cities of Surprise and Peoria, Arizona. I've also led a statewide housing study in Florida. The focus of these projects has been on examining inventory and affordability, and most importantly, helping these communities develop solutions to their housing challenges. On to Rachel. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's nice to be with you today. My name is Rachel Granrath. I'm Associate Principal with SCJ Alliance, and we're excited to partner with Matrix and the town of Paonia on this housing plan opportunity. My background, I was a planning director in Colorado for a number of years, and specifically focused on small towns, and I still do that in the consulting career now. And our role is really the public outreach and stakeholder engagement side of things. So we take all of the data side and work with you and Matrix and really work through engaging with your public and making sure that what we're coming up with policy and direction is on target with what your needs are. So excited to be with you. Done a number of housing plans on our side, and excited to talk to you about this opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction.
So do you have your presentation? They have a 20-minute.
Okay, yes, please. All right.
Ready to roll. Are you guys seeing the slides on your end well?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Greg, you're muted.
You'd think after 3 years of COVID that we'd be able to do this, right? So anyhow, as an overarching introduction to who Matrix is and what we're all about, Matrix is an award-winning multidisciplinary consulting firm. We have nearly 25 years of experience in Colorado, serving communities with varying size and character. One of the core values that Matrix provides is an integrated team approach to all of our projects. Due to our different divisions, our diverse personnel, we have an array of knowledge and experience that we're able to hand select individuals that are well suited for the town of Peonia. This enables us to bring in resources from groups within the Matrix umbrella, such as Chris Martin in GIS, civil engineering and land development, land planning, code analysis, government services, financial modeling. While we have a diverse level of professionals, we also understand our limitations. And with that, we see them more as opportunities where we can bring in truly trusted, valued, added partners. For this project, Matrix, we specifically selected SCJ based on their significant experience in the local community, their understanding, their leading housing-specific public outreach, and their stakeholder efforts. Combining Matrix and SCJ allows us to provide you a custom-tailored team of design professionals for this project. At the heart of it all, though, it's really about people. And the people here today, those that are outlined within the RFP, are going to be involved with this project daily from day one all the way to completion. And that's our commitment. That's my personal commitment to you. We're passionate about our projects, perhaps because we're also personal to us. A little bit of my background in Western Colorado. I love working with towns like Peonia, where we can identify the challenges, we can develop solutions, we can build a brighter future. And that's what the Matrix team here today is all about. Christian?
I'll jump in there. Great. Really, the key here, some of the differentiators that we feel like in this project and why we are the right choice for Peonia. So we talked a lot about it, and you can see on the map there, this is kind of a smattering of our projects throughout the country that are related to these. Almost every single project on that is a planning effort of some sort, all of them touching housing components of it, but all of them involving stakeholder engagement and community engagement. And so through that process, we have a lot of local knowledge in our Colorado-based projects, but we also have best practices and access to, a library of nationwide best practices. And so that's a huge benefit to you. While the community is different, as you get into some of these small communities, they're having a lot of the same challenges. And so why recreate the wheel every time when you can go back to what works? I think another thing that sets us apart is our size. We're large enough to have capacity and reach back to execute this project in a timely manner. You'll see that our schedule is a 5-month schedule, and we're very confident in that. But I think we're not too large that we're not responsive. We don't have a lot of bureaucracy built in. The organization of our company is very flat, with Greg as a vice president, me as a vice president, Chris Martin as associate vice president. We have authority to make decisions on behalf of the company. We're going to be actively involved in this project, and we can steer it wherever which way we need to go. If we need different resources, we'll bring them on board. The other piece of that is we're a one-stop shop. So some of our competition is certainly focused more in the planning and an economic analysis space. I think that what we bring to Peonia in this particular piece of it is that we can take it from concept to completion. We do the planning, we do the analysis, but we're also doing all the civil engineering, land planning. We have that experience working with municipalities, going through approval processes, whether that's rezoning or getting plats approved. We also do it on the back end. We work with developers and home builders and do the construction management and construction administration. And so we have a very wide net in terms of experience so that we can take it from start to stop. And then I think lastly, nationally recognized for community outreach and stakeholder engagement. Certainly we're partnered, and we brought on our partners to help lead that effort. But together we're on the stage. I actually came from a seminar this morning where I was presenting on behalf of the firm, and that's what we specialize in, is getting folks in the room, making sure we're able to reach out and touch them, and whether that's Spanish or English, strategic communication products, whether that's surveys or open houses. We're well abreast at all facets of that, and making sure that we can get to everyone, and so that everyone can be part of that process.
That was terrific, Zach.
Christian, I'm going to turn it over to you. So Dr. Karen, this is, he mentioned he's been with the firm for a little while after school, whereas after getting his PhD. This is the first project that he's going to PM on our behalf. And so he's just been killing it for us. And so we're super excited to have Christian, Dr. Karen be the lead of this effort because he's really producing on behalf of our clients. So Christian, over to you.
Great, thanks, Zachary. So here you will see our organizational chart for this project. So we've assembled an experienced team with the right people in the right places. The org chart was tailored according to the needs outlined in your RFP. Over the years of performing these housing studies, our team has developed specialized knowledge and expertise, which we will leverage on behalf of the town. And what you'll also notice is we have considerable depth in our team, thanks in part to SCJ Alliance. Next chart, please. Okay, now we're going to go over our understanding of the challenge, as well as what you all are asking us to do. So in our view, really a confluence of factors have stressed your housing supply, causing prices to rise. So there's been some population growth, in part from the influx of young entrepreneurs and retirees into the area. Definitely the growing popularity of remote work is a key driver of that growth. There are a lot of folks now who have the freedom to either move to or perhaps vacation to Colorado mountain towns while continuing to work, right? And they're taking advantage of that. Now, on a related note, you have an emerging short-term rental market, right? So as of late 2022, the percentage of housing units that were short-term rentals in the town actually exceeded pre-pandemic levels. Now over 12% of your homes are short-term rentals. And that obviously presents a challenge because those are homes that are not going to be available to the seasonal workforce, to senior citizens, right? Next, one problem is that soaring interest rates have impacted the decisions of people to either buy or rent. Okay, so our understanding of what the town would like us to do. We believe from the RFP that you want us to find out what the current inventory looks like, where you have shortages to address or surpluses to repurpose. Next, you would like us to explore actions that the town can take to close some of these gaps. Fourth, you would like us to look into the obstacles or challenges that need to be overcome. And finally, you would like us to develop a roadmap that would ultimately result in the implementation of solutions to address these issues. Next chart, please.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. I'm going to jump in really quick and really stress that last bullet there. We understand, especially in a community your size, implementation, it's easy to come in and put a plan together and drop it off and leave it on your doorstep and say, there you go, here's your plan, now go do it. We specialize in the implementation side of things. That's where we really focus our effort and making sure that we're going to take you to the finish line as part of this process. And so that's where our breadth of experience from kind of, like I had said, conception through the end in terms of understanding the development process in its entirety. That is a value that we bring to this to make sure that any actions that we do recommend are attainable and we can help lay out that roadmap for you.
Now I'm going to go over our approach to this project. So as outlined in the RFP, we identified 6 tasks, and I'm going to discuss some of these in detail on the following slides. Okay, next chart. Okay, so for the second task, which is going to be data collection and analysis. This is primarily going to be for the housing needs assessment. So we understand here at Matrix that housing need is strongly related to demographics, right? So we're prepared to perform a series of demographic analyses to help you understand how your population as well as how your households break down in terms of things like income, race, veteran status, disability status. We are also going to measure the prevalence of cost-burdened homeowners and renters. In addition, we'll explore economic trends, looking at indicators like labor force participation, job growth, cost of living over time, as well as the unemployment rate. We'll also break down the workforce by occupation, provide an overview of wages by occupation and sector, as well as quantify the size of each industry in the town. Second rather, we are also planning to conduct a thorough overview of your housing inventory, as well as perform a market analysis. So we're going to look into things like the age, condition, and the physical characteristics of your housing stock, as well as housing density, using powerful data tools such as CoStar and the American Community Survey. We're going to focus on both the owner markets as well as the long and short-term rental markets, looking at price point, inventory, vacancy rate, as well as the locations of different types of homes. Third, we're going to devote particular attention to underserved groups such as seniors and seasonal workers. We're doing a lot of work on Surprise in Peoria, Arizona on senior housing. So we'll make sure to leverage our experience there. Fourth, we're going to identify segments in the market where you have surpluses and deficits. And last, we are prepared to produce demographic, economic, and housing market projections using cutting-edge data science methods in the R statistical environment. What you'll see on the right are a couple of charts that we produced for Surprise, Arizona, where we've identified what the wages will be for certain occupations in 2025 and 2030 and 2030. And on the bottom, what we did was we measured the size of the housing gap, the gap between supply and demand at different price points in 2025 and 2030. Next slide.
Like Dr. Karen, I'm a data nerd myself. I go about it in a slightly different way, though. Instead of charts, I think maps, right? I'm a GIS person. I'm all about the mapping. Maps have an incredible power to distill some of this data to make it easy to see spatial patterns and what is going on. So we specialize in taking all that demographic information, whether it be American Community Survey data or other forms of demographic data, looking at the assessor's data, looking at CoStar data, looking at MLS listings data, and synthesizing that down and really taking that data and migrating that into information so you can make decisions with it. It's all about data-driven solutions and decisions, and that's what I focus on. The other thing we really excel in is looking at potential locations for affordable housing. So we usually make this very rule-based. So maybe you have some criteria you're working against. You want to know what the existing infrastructure is there. Can it support affordable housing? Maybe you're targeting a certain demographic area. Maybe you're targeting a certain zoning. You put all those criteria together, you shake it all out, and you can have hotspots on a map indicating these are the most appropriate locations for siting that affordable housing. One of our unique features here in GIS is we're embedded within our water resources group. So we deal with tight water supplies all the time and moratoriums on taps. And how do we release those moratoriums in the most effective fashion? So we're making sure in this case that we're serving those affordable housing units. Additionally, we focus on land use. So zoning, existing land use, future land use, all of those plans that could be put into place. How do we do this study in conjunction with those? So we make sure that we're kind of in lockstep with those. And if we need to change zoning, we can walk you through that process. And then bilingual versions of all our maps. As CJ will talk about bilingual capabilities we have, but all these maps can be both in English and Spanish, which is very helpful for the community to understand as well. Now, the last little unique nuance we have is these maps don't have to be static PDFs in a report. They could be online living maps that the community, stakeholders, whoever can access at any time, zoom in and interact with to understand the particular situation. Hand it back to Zachary.
Thanks, Chris. Task 3, I'll be heavily involved in that task. And a couple things that we pulled out of the RFP, specifically developing housing authority, kind of putting together a plan for Paonia. Again, the benefit that we have of working in communities across the United States is that we work with a lot of different housing authorities. And so we know what is effective in some of these communities and what isn't. And so that will be definitely part of our recommendations. We're going to try to take the best of each that fits the Paonia community. Assess and recommend affordable housing initiatives. You know, we've worked down in Florida as an example. One of the deliverables as that statewide effort was to really look into different programs and policies that they could consider implementing there, and then doing the analysis on it to assess any impacts of each of those. And so we've done that before in the past in other locations where we're postured to do it well for you. Funding options for property and construction. This is where our civil engineering background or development background will really shine. One, we can help you come up with actual real costs because we're doing it day in and a day out, but we also do a lot of grant writing to support our communities. And so we're well versed in finding opportunities out there and posturing our clients for success in pursuing those grant opportunities. The strategies piece of this is, as Dr. Karen mentioned, we're going to do all the analysis. It's going to tell you where your gaps are, and that's where the real fun happens. Then we dive into it and we start looking at, you know, what could work, what may work, what's going to be a challenge to do in Paonia, given the organic resources that you have there locally, so we can tailor our strategies accordingly. And of course, as we mentioned previously, looking into the vulnerable populations in particular is an area that we're going to want to focus in on. Rachel?
Awesome. Yeah. So when we talk about community outreach, we're really looking to engage key stakeholders, and that's where you all come in. You know Paonia really well. You all live there. And we also are looking for folks that are in key positions like the Chamber of Commerce, key residents, employers, Habitat for Humanity, and others that we'll identify through this process. We have a variety of methods that we've used in housing plans that have been really successful. Those can include things like working on a survey. We usually do a hybrid of paper and online so that folks can engage in the area that they're familiar with. We can do interviews. We typically call those stakeholder interviews, where we sit down either one-on-one in person, virtually, or as a group with different stakeholders that are of like-minded aspects. And we talk about housing, and we talk about needs, and we talk about direction, and really vet the community aspirations related to housing that inform this plan. We'll also work on setting up a website, either with your website or a standalone website. That can be a really good opportunity for a centralized location for information sharing, and then engage with social media as appropriate in your local community. So those are some tools, but really what we want to do is work with you with what works for Paonia. And so these can kind of shift and give and take, but ultimately we want the best outreach and engagement and community participation possible. We did mention as well Spanish services. We have an awesome planner with our team at SCJ who is bilingual and a planner. So it serves both purposes. We also have another gal who works in our Boulder office who is bilingual as well. And so we've done a variety of plans, a lot in Central Washington where there's a big agricultural presence, and engaged with that bilingual aspect. And that included things like talking with business owners that only predominantly spoke Spanish. And so I think that we can really use that skill here as well, and work on engaging the plan so that it reaches everyone. So I didn't mention in the intro, we also in SCJ have an office in Crested Butte and Gunnison. So we do have presence in Colorado as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. The last task 5 and 6, again, I'll be heavily involved in this piece of it. I think the biggest takeaway, I know we're running up on our 20 minutes here. Our process works because we've done it everywhere successfully, and we have clients that keep coming back to us because we know what we're doing in this space. A key piece of that is that we are very collaborative, and we're going to provide multiple opportunities to engage with you to make sure that we're getting the product right. And so we're tailoring the product throughout to ensure that at the end of the day, you're happy with the work we've done for you. We're going to produce a graphically appealing product, both in electronic and print. We have an in-house graphics team that is phenomenal. So we're able to do that in-house, save you money, but also we control the process, which is great. So any feedback issues with our finished product from a graphical perspective, we can tailor and address quickly. And then the key there is this action plan focused on implementation. We want to create a roadmap for you. We're going to give out step-by-step process. We're going to look for specific offices or POCs that we think should lead this effort. And then we're going to provide you a management tool that can kind of help track you towards your desired end goals. Schedule-wise, it's aggressive. 5-month period of performance is what we've proposed. But again, given our experience and background doing this work, we're confident that we can meet that. Mentioned already, collaborative and iterative, especially when we get into the community outreach piece of it. We're going to be, that's the key, right? We got to make sure that the people that are living in Paonia are happy and have access to shape this end product. And so we're going to employ multiple tools on outreach, and then ultimately it's going to culminate in our final report and action plan. Greg?
Yeah, thank you. I think there's been a lot of terrific information here today. The thing that I really take out of this, though, and I really hope that you do as a town, is the passion that each of these people bring. These are the people that are going to be involved in your project from day to day. And you can see whether it's Chris or Christian on their technical side, or Rachel, and just the way Rachel spoke about her team and how phenomenal they are and what they do. That is just, to me, that is what this is all about. Trying to rehash a little bit of what I was thinking to finalize it. I kind of reflect more on what our Matrix mission is. And pretty much quite simply, our mission at Matrix is to deliver innovative solutions for a sustainable tomorrow. A sustainable tomorrow for the communities that we work, we play, we live in. It does not exist if the housing challenges are not addressed. And this is what makes us excited and interested in supporting the town. And this is Matrix pride and purpose.
Awesome.
I think we can close our
Yeah
today and open this up to question and answers.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very informative. So I would like to open this up to questions from the board, but I'm going to take 1 second. I'm freeze.
Let me do. You're already out.
I came up with as I'm asking the same question.
You can ask whatever question.
Okay,
Okay, first of all, I wanted to thank you for the timing of your community outreach, because I like the way you've done a lot of your research up front, and then you come to the community and do the community outreach at that stage. So they have some data to go on instead of just like, what do you want kind of thing. So I think that's really well designed. I also got to compliment you on your ADU research, because that really popped for me when I saw your proposal. And I saw I knew those changes were happening in the community, but I didn't know that. So thank you for that. Basically, I wanted to ask you, I used to run a housing authority for about 5 years, and basically I saw people anchored in poverty by staying in a housing authority. So the question I have for you is, how do you get creative in lifting people out of poverty?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'll take the first stab at that. You know, the one community we've had a long-standing client is Oakland County, Michigan. So Oakland County is actually one of the top 10 wealthiest counties in the United States. It's where all the executives live from the auto manufacturers, from GM and Pontiac's there. And so you have a lot of wealth in that district. Well, at the same time, you have a lot of poverty. And so there's a huge disconnect between those that are the haves and the have-nots in that area. And so working with Oakland County have been a perfect example, working directly with their housing authority there to identify ways of addressing the challenge differently. And there's a multitude of efforts opportunities there. I think the key that we have seen in the past is getting like-minded folks in the room and collaborating and working together to come up with some of those solutions. Because the challenge is, you know, without having input from those stakeholders and understanding what their true challenges are, you're not able to come up with good recommendations. And so in Oakland County in particular, dealing with, you know, their issue there is they still have houses that are just empty. And so how are they repurposing some of those houses and bringing them in through their block grant program and other ways to interject resources into the community to redevelop. And so, you know, we've worked extensively in that space. I don't know others on the phone, Rachel or team, you know, where you've seen some success in bringing folks up from the bottom.
Yeah. Rachel?
Yeah, I think that we can use a lot of the tools at your fingertips to help with that. Small towns like Paonia don't have the infrastructure that bigger cities do. And so I think we're working on a different scale. It's not insurmountable, but that's really where I think our team can dive into the implementation and monitoring side, because this isn't something that we really want to be done and sit on a shelf. This is a lot of years of work for you all. And so setting that stage so that, you know, we have the right people in place, we have the right programs, we're using the state resources, we're thinking creatively about how to lift these folks up out of poverty. And so I think that's the approach we're looking for. And it will take shape over the course of the process. And small towns can get things done faster, but it looks differently than some of the larger communities. So we'll see that take shape, and it's an exciting time to work with you all and see kind of where that can go.
Yeah, I think
Go on, Greg.
no, if I can just weigh in real quick. I've been working on a project outside of Pueblo, Colorado. It's the St. Charles Mesa project, and it's a rather impoverished community. One of the challenges that we've had is that people don't want to be brought into the limelight. And so we've had to figure out good ways to do our public outreach and really reach into the community and create relationships, whether it's with the, whether it's through 4-H, it's through the Colorado Springs University Extension Office, which amazingly has a great presence down there. Whether it's through the youth center and really doing these bilingual outreach programs really help bring in some of the community that would have stayed in the dark, I think, otherwise. And it's really that strong outreach component that's helped us.
So one thing that I would like to add is I think a key component of this is the analysis that we intend to do on how wages are going to change by occupation over time, right? So in the study we're currently working on in Surprise, Arizona, what we actually found is that particularly in recent years, there's been a lot of growth in, for example, the natural resources field, which is not something that you would expect going into that project, right? I think that that part of the analysis is really going to help you with lifting people out of poverty.
Yeah, that's good, Christian. I mean, I think the takeaway there is we are very much a data-driven organization. We like the data to shape where we win. And like you mentioned, Mr. Knudsen, like we're going to do all of the work up front before we could begin community engagement, so that we're going in there educated and informed and shaping solutions. And so some of that analysis, like Christian's talking about, is going to help us inform some of that.
Paige?
I had two questions, and the first one was, you suggest in your proposal that you're gonna use information from the American Community Survey, I believe, and I'm not familiar with that, so if you could just describe what that organization does. And my second question has to do with housing authorities. I am not familiar with them, and if you could describe what a town the size of Paonia, how we would assimilate or create a housing authority. Thank you.
Great. So I'll take the first part of that question. So the American Community Survey is a project of the U.S. Census Bureau. It's a survey that goes out to a random sample of households each year, and people are required to respond by law. And in that survey, they will provide information on factors like their occupation, wages, whether they're owning or renting their home, what the number of rooms in their home, whether they're living in a multifamily or single family home. And what's really phenomenal about the American Community Survey is it can provide a statistically reliable and valid sample for small geographic areas like towns, right? So that's a real asset. And the American Community Survey is what we've used in previous research to identify where the housing gaps are.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. I think the other aspect of that, so essentially your census, right, and using that data. But what we like about it is it's a lot of information across the United States, from total macro level to a micro level, and so you have an abundance of information. So that helps us do like communities and like comparisons, and so you can find some likeness and go to those communities and kind of see what they're doing as well to potentially bring ideas back to Paonia. With respect to your second question, I think the biggest thing I would say from a housing authority perspective is that it depends. I would say for y'all just starting out, the biggest piece that's going to be of value is largely in an administrative capacity. There is HUD programs, voucher programs, just getting landlords involved and signed up to provide affordable housing and getting all that basic infrastructure in place so that you can tap into the available federal dollars out there. That's step one. You could take that to another level with DOLA in Colorado. There's a lot of opportunity, and we see more coming with budgets in Colorado and the focus with Governor Paulus. There's going to be a lot more money in the housing program in general. And so a big piece of that role in the housing authority is how do we tap into that and get the resources routed to Paonia. And so that'll be a big piece of the initial housing authority. Once that expands, then you start working with developers and you look at opportunities for future development and where you can start engaging with them to bring in mixed use type development or kind of low income housing options or housing variety. But as you gain leverage and demonstrate your value to the community through the vouchers program and accessing some of those dollars, then you can obviously expand.
To what extent do you intend to identify sites and locations for new housing or development?
Yeah, I think we'd probably turn to Greg and Chris on that a little bit, but I mean, that is a benefit that we bring to this project on your behalf, because we do that every day for our developer clients. Greg, I don't know if you want to kind of expand on that.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of two things here. So Chris, if I misspeak for you, let me know. But working with Chris, we've done this in other communities where we've used our GIS data to find actually available land, find things that fit qualifications for certain developers or for people that have an interest in building within the town. And so we can use our data first driven to find those land pieces. Then we work with we've worked with outside components, whether it's a national developer, whether it's internal people, to help do due diligence, to help them refine that process, find out what they're looking for, and make sure that we're establishing the needs and can meet their needs in order for the project they want to provide. And so, it's a lot of boots on the ground. It's a lot of spending time in the community and just exploring and experiencing, the areas and what's available.
Yeah, I think we approach it kind of two ways. We start with the desktop analysis that really takes into account every property that's out there. We look at every property within the community, and I alluded to kind of this rule-based methodology. We decide with stakeholders, with the community, what are the most valuable aspects of an affordable housing development? What are the requirements of affordable housing development? Do we have the proper infrastructure hookups? Are there traffic considerations? Are the demographics in the area make sense? Do the rental prices make sense for that particular property? And we're able to more or less score the parcels in the community on these various rule-based factors and develop this hotspot of say, okay, maybe there's 20, 30 parcels that rise to the top. It's like these meet our criteria. And then it goes to Greg's point of boots on the ground, getting in the community and saying, okay, let's look at the site. Does it make sense? Does it make sense from an engineering standpoint? Does it make sense from a community standpoint? And then make recommendations from there.
Dave?
Oh, I have another one.
I've got several, so go ahead and do yours.
This one's a bit of a curveball, but we do have a local group that was coupled together to do our general plan. They all basically live in Paonia. We just signed a contract with them to do our general plan. We, as part of that contract, we wanted close coordination between your team and their team. What I'm worried about is going to the well too many times and kind of exhausting the community because we have these two efforts going on at the same time. So I wanted to find out how you'd be able to coordinate with the local team on the ground.
Yeah, I'll start there because we're doing it right now in Surprise, Arizona. They're very similar. We're doing the housing study. They're doing the general plan. And so we've already started engaging, with the contractor that's doing the general plan, working together to synchronize our efforts. Ultimately, professionally, we want to make sure our clients are happy and we're going to work with other clients or other contractors that you are working with to make sure that the end product is in sync and makes sense. And so it will be a little logistically, it'll be a little bit challenging there, not understanding their schedule and timing, but we'll communicate, we'll reach out, and we'll coordinate as best we can to make sure that we're staying lockstep with them, because you're right, the general plan is the work we're doing needs to be incorporated into some of that.
Right, and vice versa. The findings that come out of the general plan go right into what we just talked about, affordable housing site selection and plans. So we need to understand where that that work is headed so that it informs our work. And they need to understand where we're headed so it informs their work. And then I think the biggest piece from a public outreach standpoint is we don't want to be doing separate data calls, general plan saying, hey, come to the town center this week. And then next week we're saying, hey, come for the housing. And then the community just gets confused, right? Aren't these the same thing? What are the differences? So that's another place where we coordinate is we try to make those outreach processes on a similar time frame in a similar environment, piggybacking off each other to one, value people's time, and two, not lead to some sort of confusion.
Yeah, that's a super good point, Chris. We're doing a housing plan for city and county of Butte Silverbow right now, and they're in the midst of a massive code overhaul. And so what we've done is pair our housing plan with the code because they speak to each other, similar to a general plan, and not double dipping on outreach. So we can cover a lot of things at the same time. And you don't want to create community fatigue. But we also want to use the same data points. And so that will help Christian and his evaluation on that side as well. And really just make best use of funds and work with both teams. So.
So I have several questions. First is, looking at your map of the United States, it seems like you do not have very much experience, if any, with very small urban communities, and it is an entirely different animal than small suburban outlier communities. And I wonder how you can truly understand what our needs are unless you come and experience the community. And it doesn't seem like there's much in your plan that says you're going to come to Peonia and look at it and experience it. And so to derive this plan without the community, how are you going to do that?
Greg, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think this has been an interesting project for me because it's really near and dear to my heart. I mentioned that I spent probably half my career in Western Colorado. My kids grew up on the road to Colburn, and so one of the things I learned in my time in Western Colorado really was the individual uniqueness of all the different towns, and then also how to listen to them and how to also understand what their goals are and not try to force something into a community, but try to bring in the greatness from the community and promote it. And so really, I think it's a lifetime of understanding because we understand your concern. And this isn't we're not coming to the community situation. When we talk about boots on the grounds, I love Peonia. I love the Hotchkiss area. I've camped many times on the north rim of the Black Gunnison, Black Canyon of the Gunnison on the north rim side, and we've been there. I love that area, and so we love it because of the uniqueness of the community.
And I think I would add too. I mean, I could a little bit contrarian to your point. While we have a lot of nationwide work, we don't have a lot of work in large municipalities. We are, in our space and a lot of the work we do, we're competing against Jacobs and Stantec and these very large firms. And so when it comes to, even look at EPS and the work that they do nationwide, and a lot in the Denver metropolitan area, we don't compete very well with them because of that. They have, 10,000 people, some of these companies that they can reach back and tap into. We compete very well in rural communities. So a lot of that, like, for example, a lot of the national work is in near army posts in most army posts, if you've ever been around them, are not necessarily located in very populated areas. They're in the middle of nowhere because they had tanks out in the ranges to blow stuff up. So they don't want people around. And so we actually do have a lot of work in very, very rural areas than more so than in suburban communities.
Yeah, and I'll just add too, SCJ, one of the points of our partnership here is the collaboration between these levels too. We do a ton of outreach and plans in really, really small communities. I've got one that's a population of 200 people right now, and we're doing a code rewrite for them. And so it is different planning. But I think when we talk about the breadth of Matrix's side and SCJ's side, we really do have the data driven, the engagement side, and it's applicable to little towns. So I love little towns. It's my favorite. Paonia is right up my favorite alley. I worked in the town of Elizabeth, was one of my first jobs, and they're about the same size, about a mile square, and they're growing now. But anyway, so I really understand the small town aspect, and we really thrive in that. And I think all of the presentations that we put is scalable.
Yeah, I grew up in North Idaho, not Colorado, but a North Idaho town of 700. And so I've definitely, it's home for me as well.
Yeah, I was a Garfield County Planning Commissioner, and part of my duties is on the commission was we did the code rewrite for land use for Garfield County. And that was sort of similar issues that you just asked about was, how do we identify 800-person town of Silt and help them, but then also, collaborate with an 8,000-person town of Glenwood Springs or 12,000-person, and create individualism for each town, but then also create a code that can universally transverse everything on that type of community. And there were definitely challenges, but we found ways to do it for sure.
And similarly, on the GIS side of the house, we've worked with Western Slope Communities. We've been a long-term partner, probably 15 years with the town of Basalt, doing quite a bit of water resource work. So one of our processes was to take an RV park out of the floodplain down there and make more accessible, affordable housing in the area and attract developers right along the river corridor there. We've also recently been working with the town of Ground Lake and their recovery from the East Troublesome Fire, and helping them restore tourism and bring tourism back into the area, and in particular try to add some resiliency to their community for hopefully, fingers crossed, isn't too bad of a post-flood scenario for that community up there. So the takeaway there, I think got 150 people in our Denver, Colorado Springs office, short ways away, and then SCJ also has multiple offices up in the mountains. So we can have that FaceTime, we can have that impact in the community.
Thank you. And my next question is, so we have, aside from senior population, we also have a non-traditional homeless population. We don't really have people living under the bridges, but we've got a lot of people who couch surf who cannot afford housing. And how do you plan to reach out to that kind of population?
The one thing that I would say, and we talked about a little bit in our proposal, you got to go to them to get input, certainly. And so, whether that's local church, places where people go and congregate, that's where we want to make sure that we are going and congregating to get information. So that makes it a little more unique. They're not the type of folks that are necessarily going to go to a city meeting or a public meeting, but they might go by the church. And if we've dropped off flyers there and there's an opportunity for them to provide input in an easy manner when they're there looking for, maybe some assistance from the church or something like that, that's the type of work we're going to have to do to go get that perspective. The flip side of it, which will be a challenging in this community, is the NIMBYism idea. And so a lot of folks, you want to take care of that population, but then you don't want to necessarily take care of it, not in my backyard, not right here. And so that is a real challenge to come up with solutions that get after that people are, the rest of the community is accepting. And that's why we come in and we facilitate and help bring those solutions to bear. Rachel, I don't know if you had anything else on that, but that's what I was saying.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's really finding the places that we can engage with these folks, and churches and nonprofits seem to be a really good avenue. Also, again, finding those local champions. We've had outreach opportunities where we kind of like hire someone who's homeless in a way that is part of our team, and they're engaging and can speak the language, and they're trusted. And so, we can work with you all on kind of what that looks like and how we engage with those populations, and find solutions that work.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about my St. Charles Mesa project that's going on right now, and very similar though. It has a transient community. It's an impoverished community, and the communication lines are not just traditional. You can't walk in and have a big public meeting and expect them to show up. And so what Rachel said, having a champion, people that worked with, we work with the churches down there, we work with the community centers, those kind of things. There's a lot of one-on-one conversations that go on that we get feedback from because they feel more comfortable in that setting than coming to more of a public setting. And so we're pulling all that data, all those conversations to help shape the vision.
Thank you.
Time.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, dear, okay. All right. So 5 more. Oh, you have 5 more? Okay, well, I have one more question, and this is probably for Christian. Your slide talked about our statistical environment, and I'm not familiar with that term.
Yeah, so R is open source software that allows you to leverage various types of packages to run advanced statistical models. And what's really great about it is I've been using using R for around 7 years now. And for the Surprise and Peoria projects, where it has particularly come in handy is it's allowed me to produce these forecasts of how their economy and wages are going to change over time. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but one thing that's really fantastic about the statistical model that I'm using is it uses data from the past to predict the future, but it weights more recent data more heavily into the projections than the earlier data. Yeah, I think this is a great tool that I would be able to leverage on behalf of the town.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway, and Chris touched on a little bit in the GIS, and really kind of letting the data inform it and creating some boundaries and conditions that drive some of that. You might see correlation that you wouldn't otherwise see using normal methods. And so by using R, you basically are opening the aperture. You have a bunch of extra data sources coming into it, and they're looking at correlation and other things in the process. And so you can identify some of the outliers there. And like the example that Christian mentioned about natural resources, and it wasn't necessarily on our radar in that portion of Phoenix metropolitan area, but all of a sudden we're like, oh, that's an interesting demographic that maybe we need to plug in and drill into a little more. So it's really just a computing power to help let the data drive where we go.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you very much for your very, very informative presentation. Thank you very much. All the answers to your question. It was very nice meeting all of you, and Chelsea.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great day.
Take care of yourselves.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah. We have coming.
The next one is at 9 or 10:15.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And if I like it. Yeah, but everybody gets down. Move on. Share this part. I don't know.
You unmuted, was that it? Oh, because.
So I was meeting with the feedback.
Well, that is a problem soon. I know frequently people have to adjust which wire. mean, Zoom's one of those things, like, I'm really glad we have it. But at the same time, it's annoying.
Oh.
So I just ran across this thing that says you're a science fiction writer.
Yeah, well, the science fiction I have written is. And I've written 3 bad novels, science fiction stories.
Oh. I started writing on fiction. I discovered that's forte. I never get to that.
Yeah, I wrote one too, and it's like 80 pages. And it's just-
But it was fun. I mean, I think it's. Yeah, it's write a novel.
Yeah.
Let's do that together.
Well, how fun.
But it's always in November.
Yes.
And I did it in Tucson, and they actually, you could get together with groups and all, right? It was really fun.
Yeah. Yes, I would like to try. Yeah. It's so fiction. Yeah.
Haven't read it yet, but I have a copy. So I bought it at Lisa's.
So whenever you get updates from the state on your population, the yearly, those are all in American.
Oh, they are.
Right?
Yes.
It's how the census keeps up in between the.
Oh, good.
Thank
you. I wanted to look last night, like. Online and this morning, because I had never heard of that.
But it's a census geek. My favorite thing is to go in and do detailed demographic.
Which you can do, and that is the place to go.
That is the place to go. All that spreadsheet stuff.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's gonna be. We're basically on one side of those channels, updated speakers, then we're gonna have a USB cable jump over to cable. First of all, wire us out to the microphones that goes to the both of those. So it's gonna be. So I was looking for more creative.
It's like I was talking to you as an angel on high.
Compromise, but you know,
So reason we should be able to do submissions.
She's gonna have. In the middle of that meeting. What we do. It's okay, that's actually really respectful. It's like,
yeah. I will. And I just do that directly. I know we have.
For the town.
Okay. Yeah, it's sad.
It's just reinforced.
Yeah. Let's make sure you guys.
Guess who owns it?
Oh, right, yeah.
That's the owner right now. Yeah, venture capital owns that.
Owns this stuff?
Yes, exactly. And that is based on story. live there, could possibly live like a community. That's the nice thing, could possibly live. I'm afraid it's gonna go away and turn into college and stuff like that.
It's interesting. Yeah, that's the. I can compare the other two.
All right.
It's kind of how I feel,
Okay.
because you never know what's coming. And, yeah, but I was just, the housing authority part of it, that has nothing to do with Matrix.
Well, we'll actually talk to housing authority.
The state is not likely to grant you affordable housing money unless you have housing authority, is that governments cannot restrict rents.
Okay.
And so the housing authority is able to hold and manage housing and restrict rents in a way a government can't do it. So it's something that I have other clients that are looking at affordable housing, and they kind of want to go directly to get a grant for affordable housing. But the state will make you have a housing authority. Now, I just discovered yesterday that you already have one. And there's a Delta housing authority.
He was just telling me that. So maybe we
need to create your own. You can just work with them.
That would be the best, because I just can't
Yeah,
imagine.
you don't
want to take that on too.
Could you want to staff them with expert staff so they know how to put in, develop a project and how to manage all of the government programs and all that stuff? But when you're a small town, you don't want to do it by yourself. You want to do it in a coalition of other groups.
I was very skeptical about that. And one other question, I don't think we have a Habitat for Humanity.
We don't. And we don't have a.
And we don't have a
chamber.
First bullet was chamber of commerce.
Yeah. And
how much research did they do?
Yeah. And we don't.
Whether responsible.
Well, no, it's that someone grew up in small towns. I mean, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Amazing.
John, was your mic on your computer? It was. I was thinking, I'm not in, shall we say, top condition this morning. Around page and let's carry this thing. I automatically unmuted, you want to talk, you unmute, right? No.
No, yeah.
Not here. I'm realizing I don't need to look at the screen.
That's what I was wondering. That's weird.
Yeah. Because it was making me nauseous looking up. It's a sympathetic nausea. If somebody said, oh, I just saw plane and I get off, I'm like, oh. I'm so sorry.
My person was a smoker and he coughed all the time, and I would get chest pain.
From it,
Right.
I'm just sitting down.
Oh,
I have that same problem. I would like to not be that way.
Right. Oh, gosh. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going this way too. I sat here because of the plug, but yeah.
So before they get on, I just want to tell you, you're predicting that she did not.
Extension clip. You and I said, okay, well, she's
I'm gonna look here.
I've been around the good clerks and the not so good clerks. I could tell she had the right stuff.
yeah.
They got They've got to be a strong background and not afraid to diplomatically tell people that they can't do what they want to do. Because it's all about compliance. And I think Sam didn't realize that. It's all about legal compliance.
My favorite part of it, and this is the thing that made me most comfortable about taking the job and learning on the fly, is that my endpoint for every answer I have to give, my endpoint is statutes and ordinance. That made me feel a lot better. There's no gray area. It's black and it's white. That's all there is to it. And then I can teach people how to do the process to change things that, you know, or whatever, but that's what's great about my job. Unlike you guys who have to deal with all that nerdy and gray stuff. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I still have a lot of.
All right, it's 10:15.
There they are.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, everyone.
Morning. Good morning.
So we have, let's see, Carson.
Yep.
Gabby and Brian. All right. Welcome to our happy little Zoom session. I'm going to introduce myself. I am Mayor Mary Backman. I'm going to let the other people introduce themselves as well.
I'm Paige Smith, the town trustee.
Dave Knudsen, town trustee.
John Valentine, town trustee.
And I don't have a Zoom, but I'm Leslie Guzman.
Sorry, I didn't catch the last person's name.
It's Leslie Guzman.
Oh, hi, Leslie.
Hi, Brian.
Leslie, you have a little bit of an echo.
Oh, I do? Okay, I don't know why. I don't have my Zoom on. Huh.
It's the exception of acoustics.
That's
I think it might
that's
just
all
be the
right.
acoustics of the room.
Yeah, it's okay. As long as you speak up, we can hear you. Great to hear your voice again.
I won't be talking soon.
Okay. So go ahead. I'm good. You guys introduce yourself. You have a 20-minute presentation. So go for it.
We won't waste any time. We'll get right into it. 'Cause I know you have a tight schedule this morning to squeeze everybody in. Can you see that okay?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. I'll introduce the team. Thank you very much for coordinating your schedules and making time for us this morning. My name is Brian Duffany. I'm a principal with EPS. I've got about 20 years of experience in this area. I've been with EPS for about 18 years, doing a lot of work on housing, economic and community development planning, growth impact studies. EPS is a kind of a land use economics consulting firm. So we work in all of these kind of complex intertwined areas around economic development and housing. Our focus is my focus has been Mountain West, from Montana to New Mexico, and a lot of my work has been throughout Colorado. We're the lead consultant on this. We're going to be covering the needs assessment component of it, partnering with Gabby's team on the outreach. We will be evaluating the economy and the real estate market, which informs the needs assessment, leading the site feasibility assessments, and then producing the implementation and action plan. And we've worked a lot with SE Group and Gabby's team, and they're a really great partner. I'll pass it over to her after Carson introduces himself. And hi, I'm Carson Bryant. I'm an associate at EPS. I've been with the firm for about 3.5 years now and have done quite a bit of work on housing, specifically in mountain towns across Colorado, Mountain West. So excited to potentially get the chance to work on this.
Hi there, I'm Gabby Bowler. I'm a senior community planner at SE Group. We're a firm that originally started as a ski area planning firm about 60 years ago and has morphed over time into doing environmental planning, community planning, landscape architecture, and design. I lead our community planning team, and we do a lot of master plans, comprehensive plans, public engagement, outreach, trails plans, and more recently, housing plans, especially thinking about that nexus between the comprehensive plan and any zoning changes, and then how to implement and visualize those and really educate your residents and stakeholders on the benefits of those changes and really think through those processes. So that's what our role is here, is to visualize those changes, communicate with the public, come up with an outreach strategy and implement it in collaboration with you.
So I'll start out by saying no community is the same. But our team, we have a lot of experience working in similar contexts, in small communities, rural, mountain, non-resort, and resort. I think that our team really has a good understanding of the dynamics of these places. Pre and post pandemic, our work has spanned, just the changes that you've experienced. I think Gabby sees that firsthand. She's based in Leadville. So I think we bring a lot of experience in the understanding the context. And just highlighting some success stories and some experience here. We've done a lot of needs assessments and housing strategies. We like to call them housing strategies because it's not just about providing a bunch of data. It's about really figuring out where you need to focus your resources and how to prioritize your efforts. We most recently in Fruta, a couple of years ago, we worked with Gabby's team on a plan that resulted in an upzoning, pretty significant upzoning of their areas around their downtown. And that right now there's about 100 units of market rate rental housing in the development pipeline right there, which is really, really needed. In Leadville, our work resulted in the county hiring a part-time housing coordinator that's picking up the action plan and working with that. In Chaffee County, that's Salida and Buena Vista. Our work there really elevated people's awareness of housing as an issue and as an economic issue. It planted the seeds for the community land trust that they started there, and they're making progress on those things. One thing that we do a lot of, I think that differentiates us from other housing consultants, is we do a lot of real estate feasibility work. And so looking at what you can actually build at the rents and sale prices that you're trying to hit, how to get it built to where you may need to look at incentives or subsidies, depending what affordability levels you're working at, and really figuring out what the market can do, and where the public needs to step in to go deeper on affordability. Gabby, you want to touch on some of the broader experience?
Yeah, I think one relevant project that our team completed recently is we worked with the state, with the Department of Local Affairs, through their evaluation process, of which you probably applied for those funds to get this grant money that we're talking about, this project today that's using that money. And we evaluated the zoning codes and land use regulations of lots of different communities that were applying for that money. So we have a really deep understanding of those strategies that are needed to affect affordable housing, and how to also continue to get those funds from the state for subsequent grant programs. That was one project I wanted to highlight. And then another project I wanted to highlight on this page is following the needs assessment work that Brian's team did in Leadville, Lake County. My team followed up with a 3-site feasibility study where we looked at 3 sites within the city that were either owned by the county or the school district or a major employer. And we worked through with the community with a robust bilingual outreach program to really understand what was desirable on those sites, the trade-offs, and then also what needed to maybe be tweaked in the zoning code to get the density and affordability that was desired. So those are the 2 projects that I wanted to highlight. Let's keep moving.
Thanks. I want to emphasize our kind of approach or philosophy to this kind of work. We think that oops, I just accidentally advanced my slide. We really want to work with the community. This is a collaborative effort. It's helping you figure out what the greatest needs are and where to put your resources. Then the solutions this is where the collaborative process comes in. I think the solutions that are generated through the process and by the community are going to have the most success. It's sort of a ground up approach. rather than us just coming in and telling you what you need to do. We're going to start with some data analysis on the economy and on the real estate market to set the stage. But then the outreach process is really going to enrich that. It's going to give us really good input on what kinds of housing people need, what kind of things the employers are experiencing, and how housing relates to that. And then the stories and experiences from people to really, really complete that picture, and I think resonate with the policymakers and the other community partners that are going to help you carry this forward. And what we want to give you at the end of this is a really clear action plan that's going to be useful to you. Prioritize where to focus on housing, what kinds of housing, who's going to do it, when, and what's most important to tackle first. We mentioned the site evaluation, and everything in here, we'll talk more about that. Everything in here is tailored for you. This is not, a laundry list of national best practices, but we're going to really dig in, working with you and your partners to figure out what you can take on, what's most realistic, and what tools and approaches make the most sense for Paonia. Carson.
Yeah, so as we're working with the community on any housing study, it's really important to articulate why housing is important. And there are a lot of reasons for that. So housing is directly connected to equity and the stability of the community. Having access to stable housing is really essential to someone's health and well-being, to their ability to thrive in the community, to hold a job, to have a family. It's implicated in all of those things, and ensuring that everyone has that access to housing that is both stable and affordable is super important. And also retaining the ability to stay in the community where you live, not facing the pressure to leave because you can no longer afford it. That's really an essential part of having tight-knit and stable community. And also wealth building. The housing market is a way that people gain economic mobility and are able to build wealth from the home that they own. Also thinking about sustainability, so economic sustainability. I'm sure you all have been hearing, as so many places have, about the struggles businesses are having with hiring and workforce retention. Housing plays a big part in that. When you can live in the place you work, then it becomes a lot more likely that you hold the job you have, right? When you have to commute a very long way, it's a much harder sell to work somewhere. So for the vitality of businesses, Main Street businesses, housing is crucial. But also thinking about environmental sustainability. So if someone has to commute half an hour or an hour by car every day to go from home to work, that has environmental consequences. That has greenhouse gas emissions, and that has an effect on all of us in the long run. So really trying to use housing as a way to reduce those long commutes. And lastly, thinking about the community fabric. So ensuring that that a town is inclusive to people from all backgrounds and is not just accessible to people with money, right? To people who are teachers, who work at small businesses, or who work in agriculture, ensuring that those people can stay and not just creating a situation in which people with money are able to live somewhere is really important to maintaining a sense of community. So thinking about a needs assessment, how do we approach this? So a needs assessment is a starting point for understanding what's going on in the housing market and housing demand. And it's really about building a shared understanding of what's going on with housing affordability. So some of the key things that we look at are what's being built. So in terms of unit type, how much does it cost? How high quality is it? What is the market delivering? And also thinking about how migration patterns from the pandemic is influencing what is being built and who's buying it, right? With people gaining the ability to work from anywhere, this really changes the dynamics of housing markets in small towns and what ends up getting built. Also thinking about the larger economic and demographic story. So sectors, what job sectors are growing, and what are they paying their workers? How does this change by the season? Are there seasonal jobs that influence housing demand? Things like commuting. Are a lot of people commuting in? How has that changed over time? And then lastly, thinking about affordability conditions. So the housing market is not a monolith. It consists of a lot of different markets, right? So the needs of the workforce will be different than the needs of seniors, which will be different than the needs of families. So really figuring out what the needs of these different groups are, and how to make housing affordable to these particular groups.
Thanks, Carson.
So to complement the data analysis, we also need qualitative data and engagement to really round out the research. And so we put together a multifaceted outreach methodology, but we can, we're really flexible with this. We just think that a bunch of different ways to do outreach really helps us reach different people, have different types of conversations in different formats. And so we thought a set of one-on-one interviews with some key stakeholders, maybe what we would call maybe experts on this, people that are in the know, in the mix in housing, combined with focus groups of different interest groups, whether that's farm workers or business owners or realtors, people with kind of different lenses on the housing situation. And then that would all come together through a community open house once we had our initial research, and we're kind of done with that, and we're starting the draft housing strategy and ideas plan to really get feedback on key preferences. And also it's an opportunity to educate the public. Sometimes the anecdotal data and the research data don't quite match. And that's an opportunity to bring everyone together and talk through that. And we also note that we can bring bilingual services, whether that's translated materials or even live interpretation, if that's desired in Paonia.
And then after the outreach, we would want to come back and kind of do some kind of a work session, whether it's with this group, elected official body, or sort of a key community partner body, advisory group kind of thing, and start hashing out where we think this is headed, what we think the initial priorities are, and start talking about the solutions and the tools that we want to recommend. So we're kind of incremental, not just giving you something at the end of the study. All right, sites and feasibility study. This is obviously, we're not designing and designing a project and engineering it and all that, but we want to try to give you some inspiration on what could happen. So again, I think this is something that may differentiate our approach to other consultants. I don't know. We're very action focused, so I think this, if you're building housing, or if housing is a need, identifying sites is kind of the first step. Gabby mentioned we'll start with publicly owned sites, whether that's town, county, schools. That's where you have the most leverage, because you can contribute land at zero cost to the project, and that's really what gets you deeper affordability. We also would look at some privately owned sites, whether those are infill sites within the town, or if they're potentially property to be annexed. And that's trickier because private property owners are generally looking for some kind of economic return. So that goes back to the idea of figuring out what the market can do in terms of attainable housing, and where we need to work on things like code and infrastructure to help that, and then where the public can step in to get to deeper levels of affordability or attainability. Addressing impediments, infrastructure, or code are usually the main ones. And then doing some high level analysis on that, probably doing a couple of pro formas to see what could work at the densities we think we can get, what densities are acceptable in the community. That's a whole other discussion, but we want to give you some meaningful analysis in that. I'll probably talk too much on that piece. Carson.
Yeah. So how do we do it? What are the key parts of a housing strategy? And the needs assessment is one part of this, but we're really action focused, and we want to convey what can be done and how can you do it. And so the four key pillars of this are housing production. So how do you build more housing? Leveraging the private sector builds vast majority of housing, and using public support where it's needed. And then being able to meet need at various levels of affordability, figuring out what are those levels of affordability that the local workforce and other groups need. Then also preservation. So a housing unit preserved is a housing unit created, right? Preserving housing is really important for people's stability, and it often costs less than building new housing. And there are a lot of tools that can ensure permanent affordability. And sometimes that requires public investment, really figuring out how to do that. And then thinking about funding. So, funding is what greases all of these other policy approaches to preserving and building more housing. So are new local sources possible? We've looked at in a lot of different contexts what possible taxes and fees could be utilized for housing. That depends a lot on community support and also what the impacts of those might be. But also looking to state funding. There's a ton of state funding coming down the pipeline right now, both from recent legislation and from Proposition 123. We've been working with several communities to figure out how to access this money as it's really significant. It can go a long way. And also federal funding. So looking at what sources might exist outside local and state. So the USDA, for example, has programs that can help fund rural housing, but really trying to paint a comprehensive picture of what's available. Then looking at local partners. Is the local housing authority or any other partners in the county potentially willing to share resources?
Thanks, Carson. I think we're probably bumping up on 20 minutes now, so I'll just kind of leave this one here and let it sit. But again, I want to emphasize that we're action oriented. We want to help you prioritize your limited resources and give you a usable roadmap that you can work with the town and its partners. So I think we'll pause there and take questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from the board. Dave, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start out. I'm asking similar questions to each firm, but first of all, really appreciate your approach. I think you've outlined it pretty well. Appreciate what you say about your rural experience. That means a lot. How do you get creative in pushing and lifting people out of poverty for housing?
Carson, do you want to take that one? You look like you're
Yeah. So if I heard it, how can you get creative with lifting people out of poverty through housing?
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, that's a good question. So a really critical part of that is like if someone has stable housing, if that's rental housing, for example, it typically makes it a lot easier to hold a job and to find economic mobility through being a part of the workforce or starting a business, being able to live in the town where you want to take advantage of economic opportunity. That's one way. And the other stability that comes with having safe and affordable housing, but also first-time home buyers are a really big part of lifting people out of poverty. If you can get people into the housing market, into the for sale housing market, it gives them an opportunity to build wealth. And sometimes that requires additional assistance. So things like down payment assistance or starting by purchasing a home in a land trust, tools like that are a way to give people a hand up into the housing market to really build wealth and build some economic stability and come out of poverty.
Great question, Dave. Was that the easy question or the hard question?
Well, there's another one coming up. Should I ask both now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, good. Second question, is a bit of a curveball, but we're doing a general plan with another group that is locally cobbled together of people who live in the community. And what I'm concerned about is how well you can coordinate so that we don't reinvent the wheel and we're not going to level too much with our population because we have one group that's in the general plan. They want to do community outreach. We have your group also to do community outreach. Also, I would appreciate it if you could talk to me about how you can coordinate with other groups as you move forward and not duplicate efforts and not go much.
I'll preface that and then kick it over to Gabby. We sent you a scope of work and a budget and all that, and that is, as professional services is tricky to procure, right? Because we don't know exactly what's going on there. And so that's completely flexible. Our whole approach is that we want to work with you to do what makes the most sense. But we've got a lot of experience working on community plans, and I think it's a great opportunity to coordinate the two efforts because I think there's often overlap in the topics, and we can definitely coordinate the outreach, especially. Gabby, you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, we're happy to coordinate. I think there's planning fatigue is real, especially in a small community where people, we just went to a planning event. Why do we need to come to this additional planning event?
Yep.
And if they haven't really addressed housing yet, I don't really know how far along you are. We can work together on that. Just as an example, for this very reason, we are doing a joint comprehensive plan, housing plan, and hazard mitigation plan for Huerfano County. And it's with two consulting firms, and we're coordinating together from the get-go. But they were very conscious of their staff resources in managing these three projects at once. And then also all the engagement and outreach is going to be joined among all these three projects. So we have, experience doing this, and we're happy to change our scope for the outreach to coordinate with the general plan.
Yep. Good opportunity though.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paige?
I have a couple of questions and just a little piece of information. We just approved the contract with the firm that's doing the master plan last night. So they're going to get going pretty quickly. And if you're chosen, it seems to be, call them.
Yeah. Well, the timing could be good because it's usually with a plan like that, it takes a little bit of time to get rolling, get some existing conditions work going, and then hit the outreach, I don't know, spring or summer or something like that, which is probably ideal.
Yeah, and Leslie just reminded me that there's a clause in their contract that they need to collaborate with whoever gets this contract. So I have two observations, I guess. I don't recall in your proposal if you mentioned your knowledge of our water moratorium on water tax.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just want to point out that is going to skew what has been happening in this town in terms of building, et cetera, for the last 3 years. And we don't see that moratorium being lifted in the near future. It will be eventually, but it's going to be a little bit. And then secondly, I don't recall how much you had looked into the short-term rental market we have in Paonia right now and how that is, how you're looking at that in terms of all your assessments.
Those are some complex issues. I'll try to start unraveling, and I'll then have Carson and Gabby bail me out here. So water, we were just working in Minturn, which had a pretty similar issue. Very few taps left, like count them on two hands, needing I think $20 or $30 million of investment in their plant. So it really places a really high importance on any remaining sites within the town that may already have water allocations, but it might change. It might change some of the available tools. We'll definitely want to understand, what the future is. Is this, forever, or is this something that, is going to be addressed in the next 3, 5, 10 years? Short-term rentals is a big policy area right now in pretty much everywhere. But we've been doing a lot of work in Colorado on short-term rentals. We've been doing, I think we have 4 or 5 regulatory fee studies going right now for communities that are mainly mountain resort towns that are looking to use a different type of fee on short-term rentals to fund affordable housing. And we're doing a lot of work in those areas. and I think it sounds like it's something that's going to be pretty important in Paonia as well. It's a desirable place. You know, it's kind of a mix of what we call amenity rich or gateway community, as you know, as well as a very traditional Western Slope agricultural community. Complicated setting.
And I would add briefly that what we mentioned before about preservation, right? You know, fees are one way to you know get some value out of short-term rentals, but also figuring out how to ensure that existing housing units are occupied by long-term renters rather than short-term renters, and figuring out how to preserve those units as housing, ideally affordable housing in the long run.
Yeah, just to add to that, we've also done a lot of work in the short-term rentals. I led the city of Leadville short-term rental discussion and regulation over the last few years. And we've also, you know, are heavily involved in the CASTA Colorado area, a Colorado Association of Ski Towns that has, you know, a whole matrix of all the different tools that resort or recreation communities are using for short-term rentals. So I think we can and have a lot of strategies and advise in that area.
Yeah.
My questions have been answered. I'm pleased to say.
Okay, thank you. My question is about accessing marginalized populations. We have a senior population, some of which are housebound and don't get out. The other thing is we have a transient population, which is not what's considered a usual homeless population, that are not living in the bridges, but they do a lot of couch surfing. And how do you access those populations?
Carson or Gabby, you want to take that?
Can I just make sure there was a little bit of echo? So you said there's a senior population, some of which are housebound, and then there's a more transient population. I have a question about the transient population. Are they folks that are working, or are they typically, you know, picking up odd jobs and not necessarily being fully employed?
A lot of them are just picking up odd jobs, and then because they can't get enough money to get into any kind of housing, they tend to couch surf from place to place.
Right. Is there a lot of informal camping that's happening kind of at the edges?
In the summertime, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my approach to this is not to reinvent the wheel through like new outreach methods, but think through community organizations that are already serving these populations. And I'm not sure who is currently in touch with the seniors, whether that's, you know, Meals on Wheels or other service organizations that are serving that population. I would partner with them. And then same for the couch surfing or transitional transient population of like what kinds of services or any kinds of businesses that are popular, and kind of meet them where they're already at and where they, and to interview them or kind of see what their needs are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The other thing is how to interact with housing authorities. How do you believe in setting them up or interact, well, government interaction with housing authorities?
Could you, again, I had some echo. Could you repeat that one for us?
Oh,
Sorry.
It's remiss kind of. Your views on interacting with housing authorities or the formation of housing authorities with small communities?
Got it. So housing authorities are an important tool. They don't have to be complicated. Some communities, especially small communities, will form them and have the town or city council also act as the board, so that you're not really creating a lot of additional, you know, kind of administrative load and new departments and all that. One of the key reasons, it sounds really simple. One of the key reasons to have a housing authority is so that you can partner with developers, often on tax credit affordable housing projects, senior or family, and that enables the project to become tax exempt, which helps the cash flow a lot. And that's something that affordable housing developers look for, is that ability to have a public entity partnership in the project. And so that's one really specific thing. But broadly, we would want to look at what role it would play if it's needed, and help you sort that out. Carson, you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, and I would add our work in Fruta. One of the things that came out of that was that they actually formed a housing authority that will be governed by the town council, and are in the process of establishing a couple of programs, namely a down payment assistance program, and we'll also be utilizing that housing authority to make tax credit projects more competitive. So definitely can be a useful tool for actually standing these programs up.
Okay, thank you. Any other, well, I have another question too. It's like, describe your methods for engaging your community that doesn't entail meeting attendance.
What's the last part that doesn't?
Entail meeting attendance.
It doesn't entail meeting attendance.
Ah.
So over the pandemic, we've had to learn how to be a little more creative. So we have, done websites with QR codes where you can scan things if you're more high tech. We also, I really like the meeting people where they are, as I talked about earlier, whether that's outdoor concert series, farmers markets, community events, just having a booth downtown at a busy intersection, tabling, going from business to business. We can do it all really, and interview people or, have a booth with some questions. So we've done a little bit of everything to try to get the best information we can. We've also used employers to send things out to their employees.
Yep.
One of the projects in Leadville, we had the Climax Mine send a housing survey out to all their employees, and we got over 100 responses from folks there. And so I think really utilizing important resources and also keeping it short and sweet. Sometimes you don't have 30, 45 minutes. Sometimes people only have 5 minutes. Okay, what are those five key questions you can ask someone in 5 minutes that are going to be really meaningful? So they're just some ideas.
Yeah, we have had good luck with. We have had really good success with surveys. We're just, I've got someone we don't want to talk with you all about if that would be the best tool. But like Gabby said, meet people where they are. And we want to get out there. It's really important in this kind of work to really get out there and understand the terroir, to use a wine term. Bad jokes.
I guess a final follow-up question would be, we'd like to get a handle on your presence in the community, what your planned presence is on the community as you go through this process.
Our physical presence there.
Yes.
Yeah, we are ready, willing, and able to come out there. We want to, as I said, I think it's really important to be present in the community and engaged. I think we planned on 2 trips to bring the whole team out. We can adjust that if needed. Gabby's the closest. She's in Leadville, just a couple hours away. We're on the Front Range, obviously, but Carson and I are very accustomed to hopping in the car and getting out to the communities that we're working in. I think it's really important. We're very flexible on that.
Thank you.
We love going out and seeing the place and getting in our car and checking it out. That's all about that.
Yeah. But just to add to that, site visits, they're time intensive, and so we want to be mindful of budget. So I really like to plan our visits. So we're really, getting every opportunity, whether that's a tour of different existing housing, talking to people. I mean, a jam-packed 2 days so that we can really use our time wisely and have it contribute to the overall process.
Yes, good answer. Thanks, Gabby.
All right, anything else from anyone? Leslie, do you have anything you'd like to add? No? All right.
Thanks.
Again,
can we, do we have 30 seconds to wrap up and say thank you?
Sure, absolutely.
Great. Well, again, thank you very much. I again will emphasize that we've got a proposal, but we're flexible. Our main goal is if we are awarded the chance to work with you, we're happy to sit down and figure out really what the scope should be and where to put our prioritization of resources. Again, focusing on specificity and action. A lot of small towns, similar context experience. Carson talked and Gabby really addressed well our focus on equity, and we listen and collaborate well. So, thank you all again.
Thank you very much for your time and your presentation. And we look forward to communicating.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
There we are.
All right, the last one, David, is 11:30, so we have 35 minutes. Okay. Anybody know?
When's the last one?
11:30. Oh, nice. Yeah. It's really good.
See if it's already been checked.
Don't get it.
I think this next presentation is going to be a combination of one person being here.
Oh.
Well, that's right. Okay.
This is that local.
Yeah, I think I can just come.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
That'll be fun to have a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you like?
So this last one, that's the group from Hotchkiss?
This group?
No, is that the one?
Yeah. They're
One of the firms is from Hotchkiss. They're really excited about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I'm just bad right about it. Checking if you need the post office yet.
Very good. Okay, right. We one more to interview at 11:30. Okay, well, let's do that. Is
Take a break.
Sorry. We did those innovation. Managers.
Yeah, but what makes it is.
They'll start with the lights.
We just put it 4 feet, that would be 4 feet. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. Yeah, good. All right, talk to you later. Bye.
Oh. My first son in my face is below the state because they got snow in Vegas.
But it does sound, you got to Las Vegas and that homeless shelter. We got snow twice. It snows in Las Vegas.
Did they get snow in school?
Well, they don't, because it doesn't stick.
Oh, right, so it's like.
Yeah, but
until it melts off. It's
Vegas is an interesting community.
Oh my God.
You know, the part that I can get is they have the worst speeding problem. And I used to go from the homeless shelter that I lived in and drive to yoga. 3 times I saw these horrible accidents at regular intersections in town because of speeding.
Oh, gosh.
And I think because of the drinking.
I wondered if it was drinking.
Oh, it's just like horrified when it's the way that people ride on those streets and you feel like you've got to be really careful. That someone's gonna plow into you.
That's awful. And just people visiting and just showing up, just like somebody like me.
Yeah.
Showing up in Vegas to drive and stuff for that. But they wouldn't know, and then they did.
And then I took Lyft for a while and the driver was telling me that one of the worst things is that they have this really high line of people Drivers don't want to pick up around in the early morning
Yeah.
hours because of the impacts of their vehicles.
Place for accidents I've ever been was in California and the Central Valley. They get the, what they call it.
Oh, the that's
You can't see the end of your car and people are still driving 65 miles an hour down the lane.
Oh, I know, two-wheel fog is really dangerous, but that's something you can't control.
No,
You can't
cannot.
control the tree.
Yes, you can.
Vegas.
Sam. For me. All right.
Modern lives. Man.
Yeah.
Owns this computer.
Well, we'll carry on.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Nice to see you electronically.
Ditto. I bet you guys are a little exhausted by now.
Perfect. Well, I'm just joining, so we're all connected here in physical space and in virtual space, and the modern world we live in. Josh, are we waiting on Mike?
Yeah, he should be jumping on. I know when I opened Zoom, I had to do an update, so hopefully he's not running into that issue too.
Okay.
I had to as well.
Yeah.
Updates to Zoom. So maybe we'll just wait till he's here a minute here just to get Mike Scholl.
And Andrew, do you want me to share the presentation, or do you want to do that, or are we just?
Well, if you wouldn't mind sharing it, that'd be great.
Yeah, let me see if I can do that.
Right, well.
Mike says he's in the splash page, or probably needs to be admitted in, maybe.
Oh,
Waiting. Beautiful shot of Land's Land's End from Steve Coach. This is current. Very current. It's just a few weeks ago.
There we go. You got Mike now.
Great.
well, guys, let's go around the room and we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Mayor Mary Becker.
I'm Paige Smith, trustee.
Dave Knudsen, trustee.
John Valentine, trustee.
Oh, Leslie Meyer, interim town administrator, sorry.
Keep busy working, like the rest of us.
Perfect. And are there any trustees on the
No.
call? Okay, perfect. So we'll do a round of introductions in a bit more detail here in just a second. But Andrew Coburn with Urban Rural Continuum, super excited to be here. Fun to be able to be here in person, which is a rare event for these kinds of things for us. And excited to have had the chance to propose on be the first housing needs assessment, housing action plan for Paonia. So our agenda for the day, as we instructed, is brief presentation. We'll walk through the team, why we're interested in doing this work, why we do this work, our proposed scope of work, the budget, the schedule. We've plenty of time to chat, have a discussion with you. We're excited about the format. Make sure that it's a good fit. Get to know you guys better, have you get to know us. And so, you know, the team is a combination of two firms. So Urban Rural Continuum, small consulting firm. We live in North Fork Valley. That's Shay and I, and we're excited about this prospect to do this kind of work in our community. And we're joined by Ayers Associates, a larger firm bringing a lot of additional technical expertise to the team. So we think this marriage of, you know, small, local, nimble firm that can be here a lot in person, being supported by a larger firm is a really good team for the kind of work that you guys were asking for in the RFP. So the split of the work, the way we've broken it down is, you know, much more than half would be done by Urban Rural Continuum, maybe about 75% of the work. 25% of the work being done by Ayers Associates. So Urban Rural Continuum would be the prime contractor and Ayers is the subcontractor in this case. And just by way of introductions then, So the urban rural team, we are 2 people. We don't have staff. We're not proposing, us at the top, and we actually are handing work to interns. It's really us doing work. And so I'm the principal at Urban Rural Continuum. I'll be leading the needs assessment and supporting the community engagement work and the action planning work. So my practice is almost exclusively housing. It's what I do every day. Have heard housing needs assessments and action plans across the state of Colorado, and also in the Mountain West. And that includes rural communities, it includes mountain communities, it includes resort, high-end resort communities. So, everything from Sterling, Colorado to Hayden, Colorado to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Right. So it's a broad spectrum, and we live in an era where the housing pressures we're all feeling are not just in one locality, or not. It's pretty much ubiquitous across the country. And so my experience on the needs assessment side, we listed some in the proposal. Another thing that just came out, which wasn't even in the proposal because it wasn't done yet, is a new report for Region 10 that Urban Rural Continuum was a part of, and that included Delta County. I'm not sure that it's actually publicly released yet, but that did look at some 10-year projections as well as economic impacts. And so we think marrying this work with kind of a broader context will be important. And so that's sort of me in a nutshell. I'll let Shay introduce herself, and then we'll move over to the AIRS team.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I got some interesting message about my audio doing something because I'm sharing a screen. So just holler if I go mute. So my name is Shay Coburn. I'm a senior planner with Urban Rural. Super excited to be here and hopefully get a chance to work with, kind of our neighbors here. I would be the project manager for this. I have plenty of capacity to do that and take that on right now. So kind of serve as your lead and your day-to-day contact for this project. And of course, then coordinating with AIRS with Josh and Mike. I would lead the community engagement piece as well as the action plan piece, and then of course support the needs assessment where needed. The thing about me is I love small towns in Colorado. That has been just something that I've cared about for a long time. I previously worked as the community development manager for the city of Delta. Before that, I was the planner in the town of Ridgeway. Before that, I worked for the Department of Local Affairs, our beloved DOLA, running the Colorado Main Street program, helping revitalize Colorado's wonderful little historic downtowns. And then so I'm kind of going full circle here and excited to have this potential to work in another small community. I love land use codes, which is probably a weird thing. There's not many of us out there. But they intrigue me, and I love digging into them and trying to fix them and make them work better. And I know you guys have kind of alluded to you really want to fix yours up. So happy to get in that where we could. And then strategic planning. There's nothing more important in my mind than really working with the community to think ahead and try to really be strategic about our future and just being really intentional with that. So very excited to be part of this team, and I will hand it over to Josh here.
Perfect. Thanks, Shay. Hi, everyone. Great to meet you. I'm Josh Alhava. I'm a senior community planner and also a project manager at AIRS. A quick overview of AIRS. We're a firm that's across the country, 370 some employees, but based out of Wisconsin. We have a Fort Collins office, a Cheyenne office, even a Florida, Tampa Bay office. What's exciting about AIRS is Andrew and kind of Shay were saying is we're a larger firm. We have a lot of resources and availability, but what's really unique about us is that our planning group is really small. The planners on our team, we're all former public sector planners and worked in the public sector. I have 10 years of public sector experience before I joined AIRS, where I served as a community planner for a couple of communities. And so reason our planning group was started a decade ago is really finding that gap between the private sector and the public sector, where you typically get the big firms coming in giving you these big plans, these big reports, and they hand it off, and then as staff, you're sitting there like, what do I do with this next? Like, how do I actually get this to implementation across the finish line? And so our team really specializes in that implementation focus, not just saying this is what you need to do. It's showing you and guiding you through how to get it done. And I think that's what's really important. And I know it's something that as a former public servant and the planner side, and what we do is we work with a lot of small communities, because small communities don't have the luxury of just infinite number of resources to just sit there and say, sure, just plan. This, they just sit on the shelves. You all have a need to get things done. And that's what we really appreciate and enjoy. And that's why we work so well with groups like Urban Rural Continuum with Shay and Andrew, because we share that same philosophy and approach of just how do we get things done? How do we guide communities to actually that true implementation, and based on local context, your actual needs, not just coming in and saying, well, we know better, this is what you need to do. It's listening, engaging, and providing those customized approaches kind of tailored to you. So my role in the team is kind of the AIRS lead point person. I'll be working with a couple of our community planners that we have, kind of some of our junior planners, and some production work as needed, really providing that support to Andrew and Shay throughout the process. And then if there's any needs for GIS, graphical research, we'll tap into our GIS specialist, our landscape architects as needed to build those graphics. And I'll really be the one to help facilitate making sure that that's getting accomplished and getting to you all in a timely manner. And so you can see kind of the list of experiences there specific to housing needs assessment. Something we've been doing lately is really just helping a lot of small rural areas and regional communities, really trying to understand their needs, but again, really aim towards that implementation, getting them across the finish line, helping them get grant funding to actually build projects or actually update their codes. Kind of like Shay was saying, I can't say I love codes. I like codes because I like to find ways to make codes better and easier to implement and easier to administer, because I find too many codes are overly complex, which is kind of just the nature of zoning in general. So I'm happy to be here, happy to meet you all, and I will hand it off over to Mike.
Thanks, everyone. My name is Mike Scholl. I work for Ayers Associates. I don't like codes because I'm the developer of the group. I do development. I mean, my role and my kind of passion, desire is to help you figure out how to take the information that you have and build to some positive outcome, to build housing. And I think kind of an example of that, and just kind of how we work together with Urban Rural, Continuum. They did the housing needs assessment for Craig, Colorado recently, and then I've taken that and I'm working with Craig to do a 20-unit attainable workforce housing project, a medium density a project right in their town. So, and that included building the development team, doing some grant work, and doing stacking the capital, and we're at the point where we're moving forward with a development project. And so I think my focus is really kind of helping you take the information and put it into action, figuring out how to do the development that you need, and that in Paonia. So thank you. I look forward to kind of to working with you. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, you guys. So project interest and understanding. We are very interested. Just really excited, again, to work with our neighbors. We love Colorado. We love small towns. We're all pretty passionate about our people, which feels like just people in the state, and making sure that they are housed and that we can keep our diverse communities diverse by providing housing options for everyone in a community. We feel like we're kind of getting a grip of what is happening in Paonia. We look forward to learning a lot more, obviously, through this project, but there is an older housing stock, there are rising home prices. We've heard stories just through friends or acquaintances of their housing experiences in Paonia. The whole water tap moratorium issue is very intriguing to me. I think Josh, too, having been, a municipal worker, we kind of get the, I guess, just how big that is and how we need to be thinking about that and trying to plug that into all of the decisions we are making and putting in this action plan. So we're just really excited that you guys are doing this project and, you know, getting a move on this very important topic. Our scope of work is pretty simple in these big 3 steps. So community engagement being kind of the biggest piece that's running throughout the next 2 phases, which is the housing needs assessment and the housing action plan. I will talk a little bit about the community engagement. This is where we feel like we can really offer a lot. We have 18 different engagement opportunities. We are proposing all of those to be in person, unless, of course, people are more comfortable doing virtual. We could figure that out as well. But again, you know, we're local. We're just down the road. We can drive over and have a meeting when we need to have a meeting. And that's really nice to be able to do that in a project because we can't always offer that. Housing committee meetings, that would be the group that, you know, we're checking in with. They're helping us make sure we're on the right track. We're not going the wrong way. We can get feedback from that group, make sure what we're bringing to the community isn't something that people will have, you know, some bad reaction to or something. An employer questionnaire, and Andrew, I know this is your specialty, so fill in if I'm missing some of the point here, but we really feel like this targeted employer questionnaire is a critical part of the housing needs assessment. This will really provide a lot more accurate information than what's publicly available. So that's a questionnaire that goes specifically out to the employers to gain a lot more understanding of what's going on for them. What do they see as housing needs and challenges, and how do we react to that? Andrew, did I do okay, or would you add something there?
That sounds great. I would say though that I do think that it's important to emphasize how important the employer questionnaire is. A lot that, you know, employment is massive demand driver, right? And certainly how retirees move here, right? Cash from the front range or elsewhere, but without talking to employers about how housing issues, rising home prices, availability of housing is impacting their ability to operate successfully in your town, this is where housing becomes economic. And so understanding how many jobs are unfilled, are they able to hire? My guess is they're having problems. Everyone is. How many retirees are, you know, of their current workforce? How many are going to retire? What are their job projections over the next 5 years? That is how you get really fine-grained detail about the number of housing units that you're going to need over the next 5 years, which is going to help you plan accordingly and then put that into an action plan and move forward into the kind of work that Mike is doing that he provided as an example. Correct. So yeah, perfect, Shay. Thank you.
Thank you. So in addition to those, we really want to do some focus groups or interviews with realtors, property managers, and also those vulnerable and marginalized populations. So we were thinking it might be best to actually reach out to the Spanish-speaking community directly and have a separate meeting with that group, because showing up to a large open house as a Spanish speaker might be a little bit intimidating. But do maybe about 8 of those different targeted outreach meetings plus realtor or property manager focus group or interviews. We also really want to do a large community open house. So that's where you like really gain a lot of excitement about a project, get everyone together, have stations, have some fun engagement if we can, you know, provide childcare, get snacks, and really go all out to have people show up, have people learn, and have people participate in this project. And then, of course, town board meetings. We are happy to show up to those. We weren't clear in the RFP if you wanted the consulting team to be there or not, but we are happy to be there and show up for those meetings. And I will hand it over to Andrew to talk about the housing needs assessment.
Yeah, thanks, Shay. So we talked about the employer questionnaire, but I would applaud you on your RFP. You added a lot of detail in there about what you want to see and sort of the metrics that you want us to look at. And we will do all of that. I think we hit on all of those plus a few more things like commuting, right? You have a lot of people who are commuting down to Hotchkiss, Delta, Montrose, Junction, and then you got a lot of other people coming up to pay on you to work, right? So thinking about commuting is important in this context. So there's, I think the needs assessment can often get overlooked and just think like, well, what do we do about it? And the needs assessment is, well, we need to define the problem pretty clearly, right? We need to know what is the problem around pricing? What is the problem around construction costs, right? Can the market meet some of this need? What percentage might need to be subsidized? So we intend to give you, very clear number, right? What is your catch-up need? How short are you today? And how many more homes do you need to build over the next 5 years to keep up with the job? Which I mentioned, we need to talk to employers. And then break that down by how many of those people will need to own, how many will rent, what are the prices that those people can afford based on the 30% gross income standard that federal and state agencies use in this regard. So we'll break that all down for you very clearly so you can see it. And then that information gets fed into the action plan. Well, how do we address those needs, right? And you've certainly targeted some of those. So providing that, very well-researched, clear needs assessment is important. We got for you. And I'll hand it back to you, Shay, for the action.
Awesome. So the action plan, we really want to get you guys a realistic plan, but also very detailed that can help you guys move forward and know exactly what to do. Like Josh was kind of talking about, make sure that it is clear. We also really want to position you well for future grants. There's a lot of money coming up for affordable housing, and want to make sure you guys can get there, and you're prepared for that if you want to. How we get this done is pretty simple. A lot of research, a lot of learning what's available now, publishing a document about what is available now, because often things are just overlooked and people don't even know that there's money maybe for rehab or for putting a new roof on or something like that. And then creating initial strategy list, really working with the community to refine that and feeling what they are comfortable with, what wants to be, what kind of rises to the top and what the priority is. There are a couple of optional add-ons that we included in the scope of work, and we're happy to talk more about those. The basic gist is that the first one is getting you some actual code language. So we understand per the DOLA IHOP money that is funding this project, you guys have to really do a good faith effort to adopt at least 3 or really any of the qualifying strategies. So we want to get you far down the road on those, and want to maybe we could talk later in our questions about how far you guys want to get with that. But we were hoping to provide you guys actual code language that you could take right to a board meeting to introduce, or you could take to a workshop and start refining it. We also offered as an optional item to maybe start developing an affordable housing project. So doing the kind of initial look at what a project could be if you were to develop it. We don't want to spend too much time or money on that. In our opinion, we're happy to if you guys want to, but we don't want to get too far, given that you have this TAP moratorium. You have a lot of other issues you're working on, and we don't feel like spending a lot of time and money on developing a project at this point is probably the best use of time. But at least start thinking about it, because these projects take a long time, and if you don't start now, you could be behind. So maybe a little start to help work toward that. Otherwise, our schedule is do everything now and start quickly. So the 3 phases would run concurrently. Community engagement throughout both of the housing needs assessment and the housing action plan. We can meet the deadlines that you guys have set in the request for proposal starting March 20th, getting everything prepared and ready for the board to consider adoption on July 25th. We can definitely do that. This is a pretty tight schedule. A lot of housing needs assessments alone take longer than this. So we were hoping we could talk about maybe what your goals are, what your deadlines are, to see if you guys are interested in expanding this maybe a month or 2. It's a really important topic, and we feel like if we go too fast, the community might feel a little bit behind, and you'll have to make up that time when you go to actually implement it. So if we can spend a little more time trying to get the community on board, make sure that we have a really good plan, it might save you guys time down the road in implementing, because people are already on board, they've bought in, they felt heard and part of the process, and they're ready to hit the ground running and take care of the project. So hopefully we can talk about the schedule a little bit in some of your questions. The budget, I won't spend too much time on this, but total is 70,150. You can see we're spending about equal amounts on all of the different parts, with a lot spent on community engagement. We just really feel like that's important, and it seemed like you guys did too in the request for proposals. Being the first needs assessment, the first action plan, again, just really want to bring the community along. And then those optional add-ons would add some cost, so that is something we could talk through if you guys wanted to add those on or not. And otherwise, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to listen to us. And we really want to make sure you guys get what you need. So tell us where you have questions, what you want to talk through, what we might have missed the mark on or need to adjust. But again, thanks for taking the time to talk to us, and we look forward to some Q&A.
Thank you very much. I had
First of all, really appreciate your proposal, especially the local aspect of it. Responsive you'll be to the local community and be able to have boots on the ground here. Big differentiation between yourself and other firms on that. So that's really exciting to me. One of the things that I wanted to cover with you to make sure is, and I'm asking this of all the other firms, how do you get creative in lifting people out of poverty, this housing?
Yeah, interesting. Well,
And sorry to interrupt, Andrew. Could you repeat the question if you don't mind? Dave's voice was a little bit muffled.
Just to give you a little background, I worked for a housing authority for 5 years. And it was in a small rural community in Arizona. And so what I saw was a lot of people just being stuck in that poverty kind of grind. So what I wanted to ask you is, well, how do you see lifting people out of poverty with this housing proposal?
Did you hear that, Jay?
Kind of, how do you get people stuck out of poverty with this project?
How do you lift people out of poverty? Yeah, I mean, I can take a crack at it. I mean, that's obviously a very large topic with lots of aspects, systemic aspects around how our government and our society function. But I think it's important to say that, without a stable, safe roof over your head, you're very unlikely to ever get out, right? And so I think that providing, an actionable set of tools that the government can take, in addition to partnering with key stakeholders to get that housing on the ground, right? When we're talking about poverty, we're under 60% AMI. We might even be in transitional housing under 30% AMI. It needs to be highly subsidized. It's not possible for the market to build it. And so bringing all the tools to the table is important. And I think, that's what we would propose to do, is have the conversation about that full toolkit, incentives, regulations, partnerships, right? It takes a really collaborative approach to get that housing on the ground, and that then builds the foundation upon which people have a stable roof over their head with a payment that they can afford, with the idea being that in theory, paying 30% of your income is that you would have 70% left over to pay for all other life's necessities. There's plenty of research to suggest that that's still extremely difficult to do, especially when you're, under 30%. So that's, bringing in additional tools, working with the partners, government and nonprofit and private sector to try to get that done, I think is important. Shay or Mike or Josh, do you have anything to add to that?
If I could, one of the things I think, I know it's a big question, obviously, and if I had the solution to that, I'd probably be the most employed consultant in America right now. But I do think fundamentally it's important to kind of be able to understand at the customer level what that experience is with the housing locally. And some of the questions that I look for when we're working on projects, and I think it's front of center because I'm working on the project in Craig, is providing people opportunity to build equity, providing people with opportunity to live near employment, to minimize other costs. I mean, it's not just housing. It's, if you have to drive 45 minutes a day, that's childcare, that's gas, that's car maintenance, it's everything else that adds up. So I think part of it is as far as the housing is concerned, is, it's wealth building. It's proximity to opportunity. It's those considerations I think that I think are really important when you're contemplating, some of these opportunities, and how you approach them.
Yeah.
Second question has to do with, just this week, we approved our contract with a group that is, again, cobbled together local group that is doing a general plan. And in their contract, we asked them to coordinate with whoever is the successful firm in doing our affordable housing plan. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to have one group doing too much community engagement and going to the well too often. That's one thing we're concerned about. So I wanted to have you address how you could coordinate with the people that are doing our general plan.
Sure. Yeah, really good question. I'll kick it over to Shay, but I think we have every intention of doing that, and I would be curious where you are in that process. I know when we came to the meeting a couple of nights ago, it sounded like the contract was through, and so Marissa's team is under contract now. Right. Okay, perfect. So Shay, I guess I'll let you take that one on.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, actually. So we got in touch with Marissa, or she got in touch with us shortly after the pre-proposal call for this project. So we went down a rabbit hole, and we've already talked about how we're going to coordinate. Not really, but we were talking about this project, and she was saying, she was explaining what she was doing. And I had talked about my background, so it was great to have that conversation with her. But yes, we really feel like coordination with that master plan project is important. And you don't want to have kind of survey or open house fatigue and people not showing up or getting the projects confused and not knowing what's going on. Because that just looks bad and people get frustrated, even if they like the project, it just doesn't go well. So I think that is one thing that would be helpful in adding a little bit of time to the proposed schedule. If we could add another month or two to this schedule, I think it would allow for a lot better coordination with the master plan efforts. Just because if they say, hey, we can't do that open house for another week or two, that would really push our schedule out. And as you can see in our proposal, our schedule is like, we have got to accomplish something every single week and keep it moving. But yes, absolutely. Coordination is important. Typically, housing is a major part of a master plan. So we may even be able to coordinate in terms of, project branding, or, how we communicate what we're doing. And this is the housing element of the larger master plan. And their team is working on the other elements. You have your parks, rec, and trails element already. So I think there's a great potential to coordinate this and really have a lot of efficiencies there in gathering the community, at one time, or surveying the community, or having both communities or both consultant groups participate in those focus group meetings.
Yeah, and I guess a question for you guys on that front. I think the original idea was that master planning schedule was also going to be on a fairly fast timeline, 6 or 7 months. Is that still what you're anticipating in terms of the overall master planning schedule?
Yeah, I think they pushed it out to the end of January.
Until okay, perfect. So yeah, I think it would be helpful then to kind of talk through schedule. I know the idea was to sort of meet that July 25th date for this particular effort. And I think, we can absolutely meet that date. There's no question about that. But I think what, Shay was alluding to is, in terms of bringing the community along, in terms of aligning with that master plan, would it make sense to at least slow this project down just a little bit, maybe even into early fall, so that when you're looking to hold maybe a very large open house You know, if we were to try to combine that with the master planning effort, getting that timing to align would be really important, but our schedule, and Shay alluded to it, I mean, if you turn to that page, it's every single week, and if we skip a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it's gonna be really tough to meet your deadline. I mean, the needs assessment is gonna be on about a 60-day timeline. That's really fast, because I'm gonna need to do a survey and get out to the business community for a month, probably, right? And then pull all this data together, write this document, get it out to you early in the process, get it to the committee that we've proposed to stand up and get underway and help us through this process, in addition to the board, obviously. So curious your thoughts on that, how fast you really want to get this done and how fast you can push that schedule.
Well, I think the primary driver is the DOLA grants.
Okay.
And the next round of DOLA grants is that we have to have this done in order to work the next round of DOLA grants.
Right. Yes, and maybe Shay could talk a little bit about that. It is our understanding that the iPloy program, incentive program, is now closed.
Oh, well, then that changes the picture entirely.
Yeah, they got a lot of applications this last round and more than they can fund. So what they have communicated now is that it's closed and they are no longer accepting any applications, but DOLA has lots of money and there's lots of programs going on. So there's other grants and programs that will definitely be available, but I think the tight deadline for that one, unfortunately or fortunately, has passed.
Okay, well, that's that takes the deadline away, so that we can then think about extending the deadline.
Yeah, I would say, if I could, to add to it, because we're doing these grant applications for communities all over Colorado, so we're pretty tuned in to kind of what's happening now at the state level. And my expectation is, I mean, they've been very clear about what they're looking for in terms of code requirements and the qualifying strategies, but I fully expect that there will be future rounds coming out in probably the third or fourth quarter of this year for additional housing opportunities. And I think, and there are other as well. I mean, you've got USDA funding, you've got CHAFA funding opportunities. So I do think it's, you know, there are plenty of opportunities, I think, and was certainly something we would keep our eye on.
I also think you're going to have a hard time competing for affordable housing projects because you can't develop.
Right.
And that was the DOLA's reluctance to even give you this grant, is that it was jumping the gun with the moratorium. And so I don't know that rushing things is in your favor, because they're not going to want to give you housing development money when they know that your development ability is 3 years out.
Right, and I think to that point, you know, one thing that we did propose as the optional add-on is to actually, you know, take you partway down, you know, down that path that might be instrumental in doing. Look at it all. That was the fundamental reason why it didn't make sense to propose a lot more on that front, because 3 years from now, your housing market will be different. It just will. Will we go into a recession later this year? Will it be in 2024? Who knows? Well, that's going to affect demand for housing, amongst other, you know, demographic changes and retirees moving here, and how that pans out, you know, sort of post-pandemic is, you know, you get out a little bit of a crystal ball out there. And so we didn't think that that was probably the best use of funds right now. More importantly would be spending time talking about strategies and building the foundation from the regulatory side, building up the partnerships. That's where I think time is going to be really, and dollars really well spent, putting you in a good position so that once that moratorium is lifted, you're ready.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
I have 2 questions, and the first one, you're relying heavily on a housing committee initially as part of the outreach, and I just wondered how you plan to populate that committee.
Yeah, really good question. So it was our understanding that that was something that you wanted to sort of be put in place, and we have In other housing projects, we've worked closely with committees, informal committees, bringing a lot of stakeholders together. And so we plan to make a lot of phone calls, ask all of you for contacts, community leaders across public, private, nonprofit sectors, right? So I think we put in the proposal, somebody from the school district, somebody from the town board, a local realtor, maybe a property manager, nonprofits in the community, Creative Coalition, others. Maybe someone from the senior center to have that perspective at the table. And so we propose that as an informal committee, not officially tied to the town, to help guide them from all this perspective. So we plan to reach out to them, come meet with them in person, try to stand that up. We're thinking maybe a dozen or so folks, but try to get a kind of broad cross-section of community. Folks that, others in the community will recognize, right? That it's not just, even though we live down the road, we're still consultants and, we have sort of that stigma with us. And so we want to be sure that it is community-led in a very real sense and that, there is that input throughout the process. So.
And to add to that, I think we would really want the town's help with that. I mean, you guys know who is going to be helpful in that group or not helpful. And having your assistants get those people who are maybe the naysayers on that committee and participating, so we can get them to be part of the conversation. But we would want some of your assistants knowing who to reach out to there as well.
So doers, not trolls.
Yeah.
We definitely want doers, yeah, and people tied to housing, right? That really understand the rental side, understand the for sale side, and are instrumental here. Someone from the chamber, business community, yeah. You want someone from the business community.
And my second question is, I liked your proposal to have a page on our webpage, the Town of Paonia webpage.
Yeah.
So I'm just asking if that is doable. And I'm kind of turning to Sam a little bit too, if our webpage has the bandwidth to have a dedicated spot for this housing study. I just don't know how flexible we are with.
You can create a page and link it.
Yeah, so everything, so that is actually.
Nobody sees smarter thing.
Yeah.
What's that?
Link out from our.
Okay.
That's a tree word does, because
We don't want.
last I checked, it's a really slow cycle to get changes of conditions.
That sounds good. And to me, it puts a little bit of onus on us to make sure that people can find that on the webpage too, that it's not, we need to talk about design.
Yeah, we'll just have to make sure there's two factor authentication.
Yeah, it's not a conference.
Indeed.
That was it.
Yeah. But we do think that that's important, right? Starting to build that capacity and that the community knows this is the resource. It's not, it's not go to Andrew's, domain. It's go to the town. That you're sort of the keeper of the information. And one thing we did propose that's in there is also to create a very brief document that would summarize all of the resources that are available. That's something that you could put on that website, right? So housing authority vouchers, weatherization programs, and the last, the meeting that we attended where you made your selections for this, LEAP, right? There's a lot of programs out there, and trying to put that in one place that you can just point residents to, you can point other stakeholders to, so that at least what's already out there can be pointed to, right? So that's something that we propose to do.
Yeah.
Nothing additional.
Okay.
Okay. So my question is, how are you going to reach out to the non-traditional kind of people? For example, we do have a homeless population, which is basically couch surfers.
Sure.
They'll be camping in the hinterlands in the summertime. They may couch surfing in the wintertime, and they don't really have steady employment. They have jobs here and there. How would you reach out? There.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, that is a community that is often very hard to reach in person, but The good news is Paonia is not that large. Right? And it turns out that I'll bet if we make a couple of phone calls, we can play the 6 degrees of separation game, and we can find some folks that are in that particular couch surfing realm, right? They're sleeping on someone's couch. Yeah. So if we can, make some contacts, some additional contacts in the community. I'll be talking to a lot of businesses, right? Do they know how to get in touch with any of these folks? We want to try to talk to them in person if possible. It is usually up our community reach though, but we do intend to do our best networking, amongst all of the other ways that we propose to do that to get in touch.
I think we might be able to use some of our other resources as well. Like I've worked with the homeless coordinator for the city of Delta, and she might have been in touch with people who are homeless, but maybe in Paonia, or the housing authority. They have a long wait list, and are any of the folks on there waiting and currently unhoused? So I think we can try to work through some other resources in the county and find, maybe the shelter would help provide any people they know that come down from Paonia. So hopefully we could use those to reach, but you're totally right, Mayor. That is a really difficult population to get in touch with.
Thank you. The other thing is, so the town of Paonia, when we wrote this grant for this fund, we did identify food strategies. So we already have food strategies. So helping us achieve those strategies would be helpful, but we have strategies in place. So you don't have to help us identify the strategies.
Right, the 4 strategies, the smaller housing, ADUs, short-term rental regs, expedited review.
Right.
But you haven't actually adjusted the code.
No.
You have only identified those.
Right.
Correct.
So
yes.
Implementing those.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And so Shay could speak more to that. But I mean, that is, so the add-on, one of the add-ons that we proposed was to actually get you first draft language related to those, right? So looking at your review process, looking at ADU regs, looking at how to manage short-term rentals, looking at unit size, all of this. So Shay might help.
Yeah, and those will help you guys be a lot more competitive as well. I was speaking with some DOLA folks just recently, and they said, we get it. It's hard to commit and say, we're going to do this, this, and this, but you haven't actually proposed any language to the community or changed your code. And when you go to do that, you might realize that that is not for us. We do not want to get into that, or we actually want to do something else. So through our strategies and through the housing action plan, we want to look at all of those strategies because genuinely they are a really good place to start. And those all really can help affordable housing in a community, but they might not all be right for you. So look at all the items on the list, especially the ones that you guys kind of committed to for this grant application. And then really try to get you as far as you can, or as we can, down the road on adopting those, because what I have heard from the DOLA folks is, yeah, you don't have to adopt all of them. We're not going to take your grant money away if you don't adopt them, but really make a good faith effort in adopting those. And it's going to make you more competitive for all DOLA grants down the road, and DOLA is where all the money is, or most all of the money. So as far as we can get you guys on those, it might even help with an energy and mineral impact grant saying, hey, we're doing our part. We're really trying. We're updating our code. We're doing the bit we can do. Please help us. And, given all of your infrastructure needs, I think that will be really helpful. Get you as in good of a place as we can to help you guys get more grant money.
And I might just add a little bit of a segue there, but one thing you asked for in the RFP was looking essentially at the capital gap and how much funding is going to be needed to build the housing that we would say you need over the next 5 years. And this is where Mike comes in instrumentally, does this for a living, right? So really taking a look at that and giving clarity around the amount of money we're talking about, because it's a lot of money. mean, your median sale price for a single family house in 2022 was $440,000. That's 200% AMI for the average house. Okay, so the capital gap here is large, and this is not uncommon. Mike can speak to it in depth. And so that subsidy, you know, that amount of money that you're going to need to go after on a per unit basis is pretty high. Right? Speaking to kind of the 60% AMI and under in particular.
Yeah, if I could just kind of speak to it a little bit, if I'll try to be brief, even though when I start talking about redevelopment development, I can go on forever. Because I enjoy kind of helping communities, but I think Andrew's absolutely right. I mean, part of it is looking at kind of, you know, it's the ability to get control of real estate, because, you know, as one of my sayings when I work with communities is, if you control the real estate, you control your future. And I think part of that, when you're looking at affordable and attainable housing, the ability to get control of real estate is essential, you know, so that you can start to plan out for the development. But also trying to find areas where you can be opportunistic. And one of the things, and we don't need to get into it, but I know you've got a TAP moratorium, but are there other areas like upper floor housing in your downtown that might be able to kind of, where you could do some conversions where TAPs already exist? You know, I did a project like that in Laramie, Wyoming, where I helped their downtown group do 3 units and put together a development plan and grant funding and capital. We went out and went to the banks and did the whole thing, you know, through turning the keys over to tenants. So it's trying to be creative and opportunistic, because you really, when you're dealing with affordable, this kind of housing, you really have to, you know, you really have to be very creative in how you approach it and understand where there may be opportunities out there that you know, you may not be aware of right now.
Thank you. All right, anything else from anyone? Okay.
Thank you, Andrew, for showing up in person. It's very refreshing.
You're very well. I'm glad to be here in person and have the opportunity to present to you guys this morning. And thank you for taking the time for putting the RFP out and taking all the initiative that it takes to get to this step. There's still a lot more work to do, whoever you decide to work with, and getting all the way to, you know, what Mike's talking about, actually handing keys over to a tenant. It's a pretty long road, and it takes a lot of stakeholders and a lot of time and a lot of effort. So I applaud you guys on.
Thank you so much.
You.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. We'll take the Zoom.
So this is available for people to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, so the trustees that weren't here, maybe.
Yeah.
We didn't ask a question about Spanish stuff. That was one of your questions.
Yeah, we didn't answer that.
I haven't seen a lot of that.
Okay.
Right.
You have to ask her how long she has to use those skills. I don't think it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
As far as like governor or matron, but we don't know.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, secondary data would say that share of your population is Hispanic, not to say that they're Spanish only speakers. It's fairly well relative speaking, but not to discount the importance of engaging with them to the extent that
It could be understood.
Yeah, so, you know, to the extent that we can do that, certainly. You know, we propose to translate, you know, public materials into Spanish and English and make sure they're distributed throughout town. Get everybody excited in here.
Yeah,
So,
appreciate it.
yeah.
All right.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys. I'll get out of your hair. Let's deliberate or go on with your day. Let's maybe go to lunch. Yeah.
It's good. Thank you all.
About bringing my computers, and I'm so glad we did. It helps so much to have our faces on there.
Oh, I.
You want me to move the chair since we. Thank you all.
Thank you, nice to meet you.
Thanks, good. Thanks again.
Just hope to do that on the meetings too, I guess, but this.
Oh,
Let's see my mom up there.
It's for Zoom meetings like this, I think it's great setup. When we get out. Let's go. Then we'll be back. So, corrections?
Holy cow, man. Let me switch one of that. What's it?
Okay.
I got a 3, 2, 1, just like that. Once I was done.
Yeah.
My questions, of course, are about the coordination.
Mhm.
No problem with this one. They've already talked, they've already talked, you know, so. You know, when it's really pushing out, keep moving the project on, they don't push this particular thing, so I'm just revised this last.
And we know we did get that email from Marissa.
I didn't see that.
Yeah. Recommending.
Oh, right, yes.
It was probably.
Oh,
I
did see it.
2 weeks after. Yeah, but I probably have the same 3, 2, 1 you do.
Yeah,
My matrix, I like their data, but they're just so disconnected. Maybe will come out. You know, I didn't get anything clear about how they're gonna come and see us, you know? And I thought that just makes it for me, you know. I like that number 2 group, and I also liked how they were bringing the data in, them doing the community, I like that. I thought that was really cool. So if these guys wouldn't work out. Didn't, matrix was just like too
statistic.
It's, they don't know enough about small communities.
Right, it was just too, no. Too.
I could never penetrate Matrix's corporate speak.
That was just.
So I have a whole bunch of points against them, but there's no point in bothering. So EPS was a lot closer second for me. I thought they were a little more together and a little more professional. But my head was to be careful. The urban rural is good enough. I mean, they're totally on top of it. Your arguments were really important. That's correct. They're on top of it. They talked to people already, local, and so I was a toss-up between EPS and urban rural. Both of them are strong, but I would be happy to defer to urban rural if that's what the sentiment tends to be. I put personally, just my personality, I put a fair amount of weight into what your arguments are and what other people are thinking, because I'm not always, you know, the best judge. So I have that much experience with all this kind of stuff. And so urban rural is your first, right?
It's my first.
Yeah, and it sounded like you were saying the same thing.
Yeah, it's my first.
So I've been fine with that as what I'm saying.
Second.
No problem.
I do. Do we had talked about wanting to investigate their references.
Yeah.
So would you like that we investigate the references for both or simply? Well, we can't decide today. No, we can't. Okay, so never mind.
Yeah.
But we can decide to do references.
Yeah. I think checking references for EPS and urban rural makes a lot of sense. Since, there seems to be out there. But, speaking of what Leslie has talked about and land use being needed to be really strong on this, I think urban rural is strong. Component to it and the way most of them. So, that was. Urban. Their land use.
And was it the same sequence?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think checking references on those. What about you, Leslie?
Well, I'm gonna have a really different opinion. Yeah. I agree with you, Matrix. I thought I was in a Zig Ziglar how to sell. I mean, some of the phrases were straight out of sleazy marketing catalogs. So full disclosure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it being, oh, it is.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I have a very long relationship with EPS. I was intermittently or unintentionally involved in them coming to Colorado. I worked with them in California. I think they are the outstanding land use and economics firm in the country. And I had worked with an economist, Dan Dumont, here in Colorado and wanted to introduce him to them just because they have a philosophy that I so much believe is the most successful. And they ended up hiring Dan and he started their Denver office. So I know Brian from when he started with EPS. What I like about EPS is they understand how economy and land use and site location are related in a way that other folks do not understand. And I know that their work is excellent. And the other thing I like about them is they will not tell you what you want to hear if it's not true. And a lot of these firms, I was a little concerned with Urban Renewal saying that they would check in with the housing committee about what was acceptable or not, because sometimes I think it is important to say something that the community doesn't want to hear because it's true and have them consider it. So that was a little bit of a concern. I think with EPS, they're going to get way better demographic and economic analysis than you're going to get from a local group. I am concerned, and this is from my professional background, Marissa calling and recommending them in my world is unethical. Yeah. So my biggest concern is I think both of these firms could do it. I think Urban Renewal Authority would be good enough. My bigger concern has been with Phoenix Rising because I don't see the experience level that I want to see in a master planner. So
is that why you said EPS would be a better balance for what we're trying to do?
They could be. What I'm concerned about Phoenix Rising is I don't see any land use experience and master plans are 90% land use. And if you don't understand land use law and how land use plays into master planning, I just mentioned to Mary that you guys are going to have to watch that with them to make sure that what they're coming up with as recommendations are doable within a government structure. But I think, this group I was prepared to think was too green and they are underexperienced, but I think they understand things. I was a little bit concerned about the emphasis on the code and writing codes and loving codes and all that stuff. It might have been a joke that just sort of went on for a while, but for affordable housing, certainly looking at your codes, particularly around how quickly you turn around projects and things like how you deal with short-term rentals is important, but it is maybe 5% of affordable housing solution. So I didn't quite understand why there was so much emphasis on loving codes. anyway, the other thing that I would have liked to hear, and you might want to have a follow-up question on the local group, is if they have experience with actual affordable housing implementation. Because I didn't hear that from them. And what EPS emphasized that they can give you a roadmap from how to get from here to there is important, I think, especially for a community that doesn't have any experience with housing development. But I think that's a matter of simple question of asking them to give you some examples. You know, you can do a follow-up with them. They were much better than I thought that they would be based on my initial review of their. I don't know the firm heirs, but they seem, I mean, what I liked about them, contrary to Matrix, is that both EPS and urban rural, is it continuum or something like that? Or down to earth and approachable.
Yeah.
I feel like if I talked to somebody from Matrix, I would feel like I was talking to a board or something. It was very weird. I wanted to later call them up and say, you guys need to rethink your approach. You need to talk more about what you're going to do for the person you're proposing for and less about yourselves. Yeah, it was weird.
Can I ask you a land use question, a land use code? Because I've been feeling like if our code is much more friendly to ADUs, that's kind of an instant ticket to increasing housing, but it doesn't increase in affordable housing. Is that your point?
No, I think ADUs are great, but you can't develop them. You can't develop them for 3 years.
Right. Right, but we can change our code.
5% of an affordable housing strategy is code changes. But I heard a whole lot of talk about codes. So the thing that comes up for me that I want to clarify is that if they're going to approach this as a code rewrite project, that's not really getting to your affordable housing problem. Because affordable housing is about getting land, knowing that you have utilities to it, getting developers, being able to structure the development so it serves the actual needs that you have, and then managing it. And I heard all this talk about code rewriting, and I thought that's 5% of affordable housing strategy.
Thank you.
No, ADUs are great, and I don't know who heard that Los Angeles now has almost required ADUs as trying to get there. Yeah. Yeah, they're really, a lot of communities are, because then you've already got the housing, the structure and the infrastructure there, and you can provide that entry level and units. All these things are strategies. What I want to see, and the other thing that EPS does, which is why I've worked with them on 30 projects, from the very biggest projects, now like ski area, to very small projects, Lake City, Worthington County. They have a lot of public-private financing expertise. But these guys may have that. I just, their emphasis was very much on being local, which is great, and they could be here more often. But you also have Phoenix Rising, who's all here. So
yeah.
You want to.
Do the ADU codes typically come with short-term rental restriction?
ADU?
When they, exactly give Los Angeles.
Oh, the better question is, can you put in short-term rental restrictions in your zoning code? Yes.
That's the question, yes.
It's not, ADUs are, those are usually two different things, but you can start restricting short-term rentals. The one thing that I'm putting together this land use handbook for you guys, and the one thing that you there's been some case law not allowing HOAs to restrict short-term rentals. It's not been extended to municipalities yet. That would be an interesting question, but I know a lot of municipalities are restricting the amount of time that you can have a short-term rental. Because of the exact, I mean, your short-term rental problem is the country's short-term rental problem.
It's a little more exasperated, thus with
It's
increasing.
everybody. And if particularly like Breckenridge and those areas, they really come down hard on us.
Here's. Sorry, 12% is like, what does that actually mean? 2% of our housing stock. How many is that in numbers?
It doesn't make a difference. People work.
Well, and the fact that our code right now prohibits short-term rentals, and we're not enforcing it. Yeah, because of the timing. You know, that our code says, I forget what the time is. You can't rent for less than some amount of time.
1 month.
And I don't know how you enforce that, but, and the problem is, you know, as I see it from our perspective, there's a lot of people are doing it. It's helping add to their income. So it can't just be a slam dunk. We're just going to begin enforcing it for communities either. It's got to be way more nuanced than the big picture, which is the housing study.
One way you can kind of, I'm going out on a limb here, but one way you might be able to protect yourselves legally is to allow them, like with a special use permit. So you have a review procedure if somebody wants one. But there's, I mean, the whole short-term rental thing, there's a lot of. There have been more stronger funded cities that have approached this that you can steal from their
right,
their solutions. Yeah. It's a big issue.
It is a big issue, and you know, it just has come up in our meetings.
And it's one that you can maybe deal with immediately. The other thing that I mentioned to Mary that you might want to think about is once you get these studies done, you could possibly go back to the voters and say, you know, would you be willing to have an exception in the moratorium to allow so many taps to develop before that's needed? It's not like you don't have options that you are, I think you have to go back to the voters.
Yeah.
But the voters from what I'm hearing in the community, people realize affordable housing is a big issue. And if they knew that it was going to be rent or price restricted and available to lower income, you know, workers and people like that, they might be open to it. But that's an option you have in the ensuing 3 years.
Yeah,
That's
good.
why I just felt on that.
Right.
Instead of us just saying, oh, we're gonna
Right.
on that.
Yeah.
You know, because we just did that change in one.
Right.
You know, we did not include purposefully that.
Right. But
For housing.
But that would also open up grant funding to us, and if we've got a school building that would. Yes.
Do you think for whichever firm we choose, it would be really helpful if they had our lists of the taps that have been purchased and have not been installed and knew the addresses?
Or that's gonna be part of it.
I mean, that there's addresses with each one of those in town.
No, you want them to look at your demographics, at your economy, and you want them to project out who's going to be living here and what your economy is and what the needs are for under market housing. The taps, you don't want them to get involved in that kind of detail before they give you a strategy, the types of development, what your funding ability is. Because that's drilling down into something that I don't know that you want your affordable housing team to be doing.
Well, the reason I brought it up is because there's at least 100 places in the town of Paonia that have a tap. I don't know if they can build on that, the property the tap is associated with. That was the reasoning I brought it up is because each one of these groups has talked about identifying places where you could have additional housing.
It was in the RFP that they should be.
So, but isn't that important information for land that's potentially available for additional housing? So, because to me, I was shocked that there were that many
I
tabs.
don't think they're all in town, Paige. I think some of those are out of town.
Some, yeah, you're right, some are, but you can easily see which ones are and aren't. So
Yeah.
I just didn't know if that could be viewed as a potential piece of ground for development that's not being developed now. Because I'm
Why is
assuming,
that property owner not developing it now?
I have no idea. But to me, if you know the address.
I know,
you
but
can Look at that. I don't, and I don't know, it's just, to me, it's a
you
big,
could give that to them and then, you know, a strategy might be somehow subsidizing that person to put a home on there, but the problem is you're dealing with private property.
Right. Yeah.
So you can't really value private property in your housing strategy.
but if I'm gonna have a house to rent, which I am, couldn't I accept a voucher from, and so that, and I could rent to that low income person? So why couldn't people who have an extra tab be encouraged to consider building a small unit we bought, 800 square feet, that could be used for, so it just seems like a tool to me for the private landowner to be encouraged to create something.
Oh, you
Could
could
be
put in
used.
incentives. I'm just saying you can't count on that as affordable housing because you're not a part of the decision making.
Right. So the voucher system could help, like I could do that with this house when we eventually rent it. I could do that. We could allow, say, we'll accept a voucher. I mean, I don't know.
As long as, as long as you meet certain criteria.
Yeah.
That your house has to meet certain criteria.
To do it, but that means I'm helping the affordable housing situation as a private landowner.
So I guess I'm gonna go back to me. If I was doing your project, what I would want to look at is what are incentives for people who have existing land with taps to develop them for affordable housing? Not how many taps you have and where they are.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But to me, the thing that is so unique for me in Paonia is the fact that we have a tap moratorium, but we've already sold, I'm gonna just say 50. There are 50 and potentially 50 taps in our 500 acres that they can build with because they already bought them. And they're paying a stamp fee. So to me, that seems like a low hanging fruit. Trying to get more house.
Well, there are people that are looking to develop those because they've been calling me.
Okay, and are they precluded? Are they running into problems because they're in an R1? And we haven't adjusted our zoning? Or
Well,
is
they
it,
don't have a problem if they can do what they want to do, but I have one group that just called and they wanted to add something on another use. They can't do that.
oh, okay, so what they're asking is not within our existing land use code.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with work.
Okay.
Like I know one lot that's has a tap. But it's on a hill, it's like this, and so the expense of developing that lot is gonna be extreme.
50,000. Foundation.
My God, at least 50,000, just.
And in the meantime, the town of Paonia doesn't mind that tap is in existence because we're getting a standby fee every month. Whatever that might be, but okay, thank you. But this is, to me, it's, we're in a very unique situation.
So
Having a moratorium.
So in preparing to make a decision here, we're stopping to decide who is doing the background on these two firms.
Well, I'm happy to do send a follow-up question to urban rural. That's what is their experience? For.
And then also checking reference.
Right.
I mean, can we assign that to staff? Call references.
Password.
To who?
Call the references with both of these firms, EPS and Urban Renewal.
Kind of a background.
You had mentioned after we did this, that it would be good to check references after we've done the interviews. And how do you feel about that?
You don't want to, the board doesn't want to do it, so you.
Well, we don't know, we're just asking who should do it. And whoever does it, it should be the same. Well, you and I did it with the attorneys.
Yeah, and we use the
Same questions. We did two different, we split it up, but we asked all the identical questions of those, the law firms we were looking at. I'm not necessarily volunteering to do this. Because
I don't think I can because I do have a team.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so I don't know who else would do it. I mean, you could have a staff person do it, but you're gonna have somebody who's doing it who's not familiar with.
Right, right. It needs to be.
Which is a perfect opportunity to find someone who's not here.
Yeah. I think that would be. So,
Why didn't you want to just divide it up and each do one?
well, we only need to do two.
You want
Yes. It has nothing to do with you. I'm just like. Yeah, but okay.
But like, let's say, what's reasonable?
Yeah, and we.
Because when are we making this decision? Are we making a decision on the 14th?
Yeah, because it needs to be everything now. Yeah,
So
so I did not, I'm not gonna read you, you and I could talk. I didn't notice what the references were.
why don't you send us? Or send it, why don't you send it to me? Any suggestions you have for questions?
Oh.
We also have the questions she gave us, and then
Yeah.
Paige and I will different.
Yeah.
With questions we asked, and you take one, I'll take the
Yeah.
other. Understanding we're both biased against, number two, but we'll try to. send it.
Yeah, I know, and
Paper, scissors to see who does what.
yeah,
And I go ahead and email urban rural and ask them about their affordable housing experience to give examples.
Okay.
And then I will.
You want to ask them about if they have been involved in an affordable housing development, the steps
involved.
of actually having an affordable.
Okay.
And financing.
Since you're doing that, maybe.
That's all right.
Financing it, developing it, management, all that stuff. Because you're gonna need advice on all of the above on how to set that up.
So Mary, if you could let both firms know what their final running.
I can do that.
Yeah, and that they will be getting a follow-up phone call from either Paige or.
no, not the firms, just the references.
No, you're not gonna call the firms, you're gonna call their references.
What were you thinking?
Right, it was, okay, I'm with you. Okay, no need.
Okay, so I didn't notice the number of references on these two we're looking at. Do we want to call all the references, even if they're disparate numbers?
But there's additional questions besides.
The other thing that you can do is look at their list of projects. And if that list is not like, one of them has experience in Minturn, which I think would be, and if they're not on the list of references, call Minturn.
Okay, so you and I will get together and we'll do that, but if you could help us with questions to ask. In addition to, or are you all gonna think of other questions?
I think you just asked if you worked with them and if they were pleased with their, most municipalities will share information on firms. It's not the same as calling up about a firm or employee. They'll tell you if they think.
And that was kind of the case we called about attorneys.
Yeah.
They were, really. Did you work with them and just the experience?
Yeah, because they're contractors, so you're not bound by personnel.
Okay, so what we're looking, so financing, development, what else?
So what is here from them?
And I want you.
Practical experience of building two affordable houses.
What did you know?
Managing the property, getting the right developer, public-private partnerships. I didn't hear any of that from them. And that's crucial. That's what you really are going to need, that information to be able to do.
I'm glad.
No, you're talking Gilbert.
You're taking command. It's the practical knowledge on how you implement affordable housing programs, not just the kind of overall thing. Oh, you need 20 for sale units.
Well, if any of them come back and review this video, they'll see exactly what you're.
Exactly. All right.
It's not on video. Is that?
Yeah, it means right, being streamed to YouTube.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So I am going to leave the letter of support for the school purchase up front desk. You must put on the website or whatever and ask everybody to questions.
That's nice. If it were my choice, I would probably pick them to balance out the local part. I'm a little bit worried about being too local because everybody knows everybody and you get a lot of bias. But I'm not as concerned about the rural group now that I heard from them. I did hear, it's a thickly professional approach from them. So I wouldn't be, concerned about either way.
Thank you. Very appreciate your input, absolutely, so much. It's really, yeah, it's what do we know? I've done a housing study in my own.
Yeah, I don't just, from a planning thing, I am biased for choosing people who are not affiliated. Because then they can stay entirely neutral. But, and neutrality is super important to be able to hear the community directly and not through your own lens. Where you want the community to come.
Very much so, okay, well. So we're gonna, you all will send us any questions? No, we're not doing that. We're just gonna ask them, did you work with all? We just simplify.
Yeah.
And so you and I will talk. Okay. Sounds good. It's great Patagonia, James. I don't know. All around. Great.